In 2024, I set out upon a quest. Only play games I've never finished before. Then I would rank them to find which stood above all the rest. And then, right at the end, I thought, well, why don't I just rank everything? So, here we are. Absolutely everything I did last year. Games, anime, YouTube. If I can remember doing it, it's on the list. There's no F tier because, spoilers, I don't think anything from last year was really that bad. And I also added a B+ tier because there were things I thought weren't quite A, but were better than B. Finally, I'll be picking a favorite item from each of these 9 categories for their own tier at the top. I know that I'm a little late in classic Pride_ fashion, but believe it or not, this is actually the fastest I've ever made a video without it being a timed challenge. That's length independent, by the way. I am talking fastest I've ever made any video, despite this one being... Oh god, I am so sorry. Let's dive right into it, starting with the games I played last year in mostly chronological order. Last year, I decided I would not replay any games for the entirety of the year, outside of ones that don't really end, like TF2 and Isaac. I didn't quite stick to that, but I did for the most part, and honestly, I loved the experience. I played over 50 games last year, with just about 80% of them being completely new to me. Now, if you're like my friend Miryu, who played 140 games just on Steam last year, that probably sounds like a baby number. However, I would like to add that I didn't just play any 50 games. A lot of them were pretty lengthy RPGs, and more importantly, I finished all but 5 of them. I gamed this year, and I want to talk about my new favorite shit. First though, we gotta talk about the older stuff that I've been playing for forever. TF2, Isaac, and Bloons are all easy S tiers, I mean, come on. Dota is more interesting. The Crownfall content spanning almost the entire year actually made it really fun to keep up with. It was super engaging to see all the mini games, read all the comics, and pick heroes based on what tokens you needed to explore the stupid map. At the end of the day though, I mean, come on, it's Dota 2. Okay, now for the real shit. For those of you who didn't know, I am a huge JRPG fan. It started as a wee baby with games like Chrono Trigger and Mario RPG, but I honestly stopped liking them that much in high school. However, ever since one fateful game I played in 2020 that, don't worry, we'll get to, I've fallen in love all over again. The worlds, the music, the characters, it's quickly and easily become my favorite genre of all time. But I had an embarrassing secret. Despite being the RPG guy in most of my friend circles, I had never played Final Fantasy VII until this year. Okay, well technically I played it in December of 2023, but I grandfathered it in since it started my new game binge, and I also played 3 other Final Fantasy games this year, and I wanted to see how I'd rank them against each other. Look, you get it, okay? This wasn't my first time attempting to play Final Fantasy VII. I tried to stream it a few years ago, but I got tilted at chat backseating me, and I didn't really make it that far. I've tried again and again over the years, but I'd always lose interest right after Midgar. Real Pride_ fans would know that this wouldn't be the first Final Fantasy game that I don't think holds up well in the modern day, but even still. Holy hell, man, is this it? Is this really all Final Fantasy VII has to offer? This is the RPG that defined a generation? The game frequently touted not only as one of the best RPGs of all time, but one of the best games of all time? I had to be certain, I had to double check, I had to know. I needed to see what could possibly make people think so highly of this game. And so, I powered through. I think for me, the mark of a true favorite is one where my problems fade from my memory over time. There were probably a lot of things I didn't like while playing this game. In fact, I know that's the case, but I don't really remember any of them. Thinking back on my time playing, I can't think of anything about it that I don't look back on fondly. Even breeding a gold chocobo to get Knights of the Round, which I know I thought was stupid and tedious and bullshit, is something I'd be happy to do again on a repeat playthrough. I cannot, in good faith, put it any lower than S tier. I honestly think that it holds up incredibly well, even playing it for the first time in 2023. The first game I actually played in 2024 was FTL Fast and Light. I played it a bit when it originally came out, but I was really bad at it. Like, I had 50 hours and basically nothing unlocked bad at it. All I wanted to do was play around with the boarding mechanic, but it was really hard to get it online, and the Mantis ship seemed really hard to unlock. Finally last year I picked the game back up, and with my now developed Omega Giga brain power, I finally understood how it worked. On like a basic level. And it's pretty good. Then I picked up Lunistis. This is a 3D platformer where you play as a furry, and it is just kinda okay, B tier. Looking for something a little bit different, I jump back into Baba Is You. This is the single most difficult puzzle game I've ever played, and the only one I've ever fully given up on. 3 times. I wouldn't have it any other way, B+. What is the, oh right, so the 100 Cats games are exactly what they say on the tin. It's basically Where's Waldo, but you look for cats. Most of them are free, so if you want to kill like 10 minutes, they honestly can't be beat. After having so thoroughly enjoyed Final Fantasy VII, I tried to get back into streaming games. The first game I picked was Sea of Stars, which I ended up liking quite a lot. I've seen some criticisms of the writing, the main characters in particular, that I agree with, but overall I really enjoyed the story, world, and characters. Garl in particular is one of my new favorite characters, full stop. He is such an unstoppable ball of positivity, and it is infectious. There is one specific thing this game does that I would be furious with. If you know, you know, if it didn't involve Garl the way it does. In general though, the combat is super fun and interesting, and the story constantly kept me on my toes. There were so many moments where the game did something that just made me say, out loud, that's so fucking cool. It doesn't quite make the S tier, but any game that convinced me to go out of my way to 100% it easily makes it to A. After enjoying Sea of Stars that much, I decided to go back and play the studio's other game, The Messenger. I played like half of it when it came out, and I thought it was really good, but I never finished it. I finally went back and did that, and I did not know that Sea of Stars was a prequel. I saw an area that reminded me of that game and went, oh, that's cool. And then it just kept going, and I went, oh, this is very intentional. It makes sense. This game has a lot of the same strengths despite seemingly being entirely unrelated. I love its style of comedy, and it's got a really solid gameplay foundation. The shopkeeper is hilarious, and the central gimmick is cool. Also A tier. After revisiting a game I liked went so well, I decided to revisit a game I did not like when I first played it. Persona 5 Strikers. I tried it right after playing the original, but between having Dynasty Warrior style combat and ditching the life sim aspects, it just wasn't at all what I wanted it to be. This time I decided to meet the game on its own terms, and holy shit. Persona 5 Strikers is basically, what if Persona 5 was well written? Okay, now put the gun away. Everybody knows Persona 5 is a good game. I have some story, theming, and character writing issues, but it's a high 8 at least, and it would still sit proudly in S tier. It's more of a, the more I think about certain things, the more holes I poke or issues I have with them situation. Strikers is a sequel with a fairly similar plot setup and direction, but basically every issue I have with the original is addressed. The villains have real motivations, the characters actually develop after the area they're introduced in, Ryuji gets to say fuck, it's all just incredible. Haru even has an actual personality now, and I love how unhinged they made her. Now, if you've played Persona 5, I should stress that this is a very different game. If you go in looking for the social links and turn-based combat like I did, you're probably gonna have a bad time. If you can keep an open mind though, hopefully you'll see how it's just such a vast improvement over the original in basically every way I can think of. Still though, my favorite Strikers moment this year was when I was watching my favorite streamer play it, and by the end her main thought was, man, I wish Akechi was in this game so he could have been written better. Now, after streaming my entire Strikers playthrough to a friend in a voice call, start to finish, I figured, what better game is there to play right after that than another Persona game? This time I played Persona 3 FES. I played FES. I was very angry that they removed content from older versions and then charged $70 for reload, plus another $30 if you want some of that content back. Not all of it though, fuck you. Anyway, I really like this game. The stuff I don't like the exhaustion system, not being able to control your party members, it all sticks in my mind more than Final Fantasy VII, but like that game, I don't really care about any of it. Most of my issues were minor ones. For instance, when you fuse 2 personas, you can pick which skills you want to inherit, right? The developers of Persona 3 spent 90% of their dev time asking one singular question. How do we make skill inheritance as shit as humanly possible? So first they ask, how about I randomly pick which skills you inherit from the personas you're fusing? Now, this sucks, but thankfully you can reroll them by just backing out. But just backing out would be too easy, so if you try to go back in, it'll select all the same skills again. You have to back out and then deselect all of the personas you're using as ingredients, then select them all again, and then you have a chance at the skills you actually want. When doing three-way fusions, you can imagine how tedious this gets. And you might be thinking, well, that's just a stupid cheese. The game clearly doesn't want you to do that, but the game tells you to do that. They wanted us to suffer. Who the fuck made this game? Back when I had only played 5 and 4, the games were easy to rank. 5 was the flashy one with the good game feel, and 4 was the one with the good writing and characters. 3 throws that balance off completely by knocking 4's characters and story into the next century, and a lot of that comes down to one major change. The game doesn't have social links for most of your party members. Yes, that's a good thing. Minor spoilers ahead for Personas 3, 4, and 5. In all 3 games, your characters can attain an ascended persona at some point after they've faced a new part of themselves or otherwise matured. In 4 and 5, these ascensions are tied to their social links, which seem like a good idea in theory. They have their little side arcs, and then as a reward for good time management, you get a gold star and a brand new persona with one okay skill to boot. The issue with this is that after the point where the links become available, all of their character development in the story has to halt, because the game has to assume that you haven't done their side stories. The characters can no longer grow or change in meaningful ways as a result of the story, because that might ruin the side content. Persona 3 ties its ascensions to the story, and I think that's a fantastic decision. The characters are forced to grapple with things I was not at all expecting them to going in, and it really makes the game feel that much better. It's not perfect, and honestly, I still think 4 is my favorite off of Vibes, but this is still an S-tier game. Sometime during that playthrough, some new Ultra Kill content came out. I've been playing since there was only Act 1, and people might hate me for this, but I honestly have liked the game less and less over time. I don't know, I'm not a fan of the new levels or the recent additions to your arsenal, and while I get why they nerfed the grappling hook, I still miss the old one. The game is still good, and I still recommend it, but I just can't put it higher than B+ personally. Let's see. I played Quake Champions once for about an hour because my friend Miryu wanted to play for her birthday. D tier for didn't have much fun. Let's see what's up. Oh, all right, here we go. Finally, some good shit. Fire Emblem, oh, it's Revelations, not Conquest. I played Fire Emblem Fates Conquest to death over the years. It's one of my favorite Fire Emblem games. I wanted to play it again, but since I was trying not to replay anything, I decided to finally finish Revelations instead as an excuse. And I still didn't finish it. Being built on the same foundation as Conquest, the gameplay is still pretty good. The story is pretty fun to rag on for how bad it is, like Conquest, but overall it's not my favorite Fire Emblem game. But it's alright, I guess. B tier. Now, after not even finishing Revelations, I thought it was time for a pretty big change of pace. I honestly didn't know how much more tactics gameplay I could take, so for my next game, I decided to go with Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, baby. I have been hearing legends of the Tellius games for years. Games so great they kicked Roy out of Smash. So incredible they resell for how much? There are a lot of things I really like about this game, but I can't put it any higher than B+. Ike is probably my new favorite Fire Emblem protagonist, and I like a lot of the unique things the game does with its gameplay, but man, the ending is just such a huge letdown. Without spoiling too much, basically nothing this game sets up is actually relevant in this game, because they saved all of it for Radiant Dawn. Speaking of, Radiant Dawn, now that's a good game. I played it right afterwards, and man, it's got one of the best stories in the series. The game is not afraid to fully change which characters are available to you every single chapter to fit its narrative, and honestly, that's not always a good thing. It means the storytelling can be much more dynamic, but it also means it's hard to do any long-term strategizing in the strategy game in terms of your characters and builds because, put simply, you can't always use the characters you want to use. I don't think this holds the game back too much though, and I think it comes off better than Path of Radiance. If you're going to play either Tellius game though, I recommend playing them both back to back. Radiant Dawn definitely benefits from all the character and plot setup in the first game, and overall I'd put it just higher at A tier, but in my mind they really do come as a package deal. So obviously with 3 Fire Emblem games back to back to back, I needed a break. And that's why at this point I replayed Fire Emblem Engage, baby, woo! Now, part of that was a lack of actual things to do on a cruise ship, more on that later, but really I just couldn't help myself. Engage is probably my favorite Fire Emblem game, it's up there at least. The story sucks complete ass, but I've always been all in on that tactical gameplay, baby. The game gives you insane, blatantly overpowered abilities in the form of the emblem rings and then kicks your teeth in if you don't use them properly. Unless you're this guy. I should say that I personally tend to mold my playthroughs around the rule set from Excelbum's No Somnial run for an extra challenge, but even without that, the game is no joke unless you're specifically setting out to break it. Easy S tier. Looking for another game to kill some time when I couldn't stream whatever RPG I was working on to my friend, I picked back up Neon White, and hey, what do you know, another S tier game. I usually hate speedrunning. Resetting and making big mistakes just completely destroys my mental. It's one of the very few things that can really tilt me. I don't know though, man, something about Neon White just hits different. I'm top 100 on like half the levels in this game, and every time I boot it up, I play for another 2 months. And hey, would you look at that, another S tier game. I only really did one run in the middle of the year for fun, but oh my god, I just love Doom Eternal to pieces. It's a single player game that I can beat in 8 hours, and I have over 300 hours in it. Do I need to say anything else? Now, around this point in the year, I was asked to participate with the whole Save TF2 thing, and I got into the closed beta for Deadlock through my connections. I played it twice and never wanted to play it again. D tier. I'm sure the game has an audience, but it sure as shit isn't me. Guys, I have another confession to make. I didn't play the Stanley Parable when it first released. I know. I decided to fix that with Ultra Deluxe, and man, if you skipped over this because you played the original and didn't think there was going to be enough new in it to justify it, you owe it to yourself to play Ultra Deluxe. There is a ton of new stuff in here, and it's still one of the funniest pieces of media I've ever seen. Put another one in the S tier. Before talking about the game I played next, I want to tell you a story. I think the worst idea I ever had was back in early 2022. I had 2 friends who really enjoyed Final Fantasy XIV, and I always told them I would never play it. I had basically no interest in MMOs in any way. Then, in my last year of college, I met a girl I was interested in who also played it. So I installed the game. But if you know me, you also know that I am driven, more than anything else, by the funny. If I think something is funny, I will go to the ends of the earth to pursue it. Just as important, the more effort that's required on my end, and the smaller the payoff is relative to that, the funnier I think it is. That's when I hatched the scheme. I would play the game with that girl, and keep it a secret from my friends. Then, when I had done all of the endgame content, maxed out my character, and gotten the best gear, I would go, "Do you guys want to play with me?" and pick a new job or character, and see how long it would take them to notice that I'm fucking cracked. Now, needless to say, this is an insane amount of work for basically no payoff, and I want to make this very explicitly clear. I knew exactly how tedious this would be going in. I was prepared to spend over 1,000 hours for the sake of this bit, to the point where I went all in on it. I avoided ever showing my desktop, I turned off the Discord feature where it says what you're doing, and then I played the game while in voice calls with them, just to fuck with them in a way only I could possibly find funny. There was just one thing I didn't account for going in. The game fucking sucks, man. Oh my god, I just cannot stand the way story content in this game works. Go here, do tedious, pointless task or some shitty role-playing feature for no real reason, then listen to somebody talk about nothing before they give you 2 hours of more busy work so you can get to the actual interesting parts of the story. I would genuinely enjoy the game more if it was just walk to place and watch a cutscene 5 million times, because then at least it isn't actively wasting my time. And before you say it, just because that's the way other MMOs are designed doesn't mean it isn't shit. It just means those other MMOs are shit too. I ended up giving up on my quest and just telling my friends at like the halfway point, because I couldn't bring myself to play the game anymore. All that said, of course, Final Fantasy XIV goes in the B tier. What? So if I was rating the whole game, all of it together, yeah, of course, I'd make a new F- tier and put it in there.
Fortunately for 14 fans, I stopped playing in early 2023. I started again last year with the goal of finishing the game, and while I got bored again, what I played was much better this time. It was the second half of Shadowbringers Through the Bridge to Endwalker, and I have to say, holy shit. The second half of Shadowbringers is fantastic payoff to a long set up villain, some great character moments, and just such incredible story writing that is absolutely not worth sitting through the hundreds of hours it takes to get there. Sorry, not sorry. I should also mention, while the story itself gets better, the storytelling doesn't. It's still full of the same pointless bullshit designed specifically to waste your time. I cannot recommend playing the game overall, but this one vertical slice of it was pretty good.
Then there was In Stars and Time. A few months before this, in like March, I saw this game's art style in a YouTube video and went, yup, I want to play that, and immediately closed the video to buy the game. And then, about halfway through playing it, my controller broke. And I couldn't afford a new one because I hadn't started my job yet, so I had to wait several months to finish it. I bring this up because it's actually the cause of some of my initially negative thoughts on the game. There were features, specifically this banana peel, that I forgot existed and made the game very tedious to play without. I honestly thought that the game was making itself way more tedious than it needed to be, which was reinforced by there being times where the game does make itself more tedious on purpose, which is just ugh. Now, I do have some actual criticisms. The dungeon most of the game takes place in is incredibly samey and boring, and I get that that's on purpose, but it still means a lot of your playtime is exploring a space that is designed to not really be fun to explore. I also wish the game expanded more on its world. It seems like such an incredibly fascinating place from what we get to see, and maybe I missed some things, but there are so many times where the game says something to build intrigue and get you asking questions about the setting, and then just never answers them. Hey, I know I'm being really negative towards the game, but I honestly would still put it into A tier. The story, the characters, the art, it's a fantastic experience with some hiccups holding it back from greatness. It's definitely worth your time to play, but those hiccups keep it from going into the S tier for me. I'm looking forward that these guys make another game in this world, because that could easily reach the S tier. Then, not having had my fill of decently long RPGs, I pulled out another Final Fantasy that I've tried to play before, Final Fantasy XII. And honestly, I liked the game, but there's just nothing about it I can really point to recommend it. The story and characters are fine, but not amazing. The gameplay is passable, but not fantastic. The world is
not terrible, but not impressive.
Like, it feels bad to put it in C tier because I enjoyed the game, but there just isn't really anything there to warrant a replay, or even a first play if I'm being honest. Finally giving myself a break from longer story-based RPGs, I decided to play a longer story-based puzzle game. I love the Talos Principle 1, and the Talos Principle 2 is an incredible continuation of that foundation. I found the puzzles a little easy, to the point where not looking anything up wasn't even really much of a challenge, including the side content. The real star of the show, though, is, once again, the philosophical angle the game takes. It asks a lot of really interesting questions about what it is to be human, about what we should be doing with our influence and intelligence, about what our place in this world ought to be, and then doesn't just give its own answer. In fact, many things about the game and its ending change depending on options you choose in the dialogue, allowing the game to evolve around you and your own philosophy in a really fascinating way. It's an easy S tier. And then I broke again, replaying another game I've played before. This time, StarCraft 2. The campaign, of course. I've played all 3 campaigns to death, and man, they are just as fun as I remember. Story has some issues, but it's still an A-tier product if you ignore everything that's happened at Blizzard since it came out. After that, I of course had to go and give StarCraft 1 another shot. D tier. I am so sorry to any StarCraft 1 enjoyers out there, but despite my playtime in Dota and StarCraft 2, I suck ass at microing individual units and avoid it if at all possible. This, funnily enough, makes a game where you can only select 12 units at a time very difficult for me. While it can be funny at times, overall it's clunky and old and bleh. I just can't really recommend it if I can't even be bothered to play more than a few hours of it. By now I was ready for a pretty big mix-up, and I just recently moved out, so I decided to play Pseudo Regalia to break in the new place. This is a fun little 3D indie Metroidvania where you play as a furry with a huge ass that is constantly swinging in the camera's face. 80. And then there's Corn Kid 64.
I wanted to love this game, I really did. It's trying to look like if a Cartoon Network Billy and Mandy style TV show had an N64 game made for it, and it nails that aesthetic so hard. Unfortunately, I just really do not like how the game feels. I feel like I'm constantly fighting the camera and missing easy jumps as a result. Bleh. I think the game is worth your time if you vibe with its aesthetic, but I just couldn't bring myself to finish it. Having taken a sufficiently long 2-game break from longer RPGs, I was ready to get back into one. After years of hearing people call it one of the best RPGs, hearing people liken it to Shakespeare, hearing my sister go on and on about it, I finally played Disco Elysium. B+. And now for the greatest magic trick of my career, digging my way out of this hole. So something you have to know about me as an RPG fan is that I have to see all the dialogue. I won't reload saves for it, but if you give me multiple dialogue paths, I'm going to backtrack through all of them. And if you drop me in a room with a bunch of NPCs, I feel obligated to talk to all of them. I also love ignoring the main story intentionally to play side content. I like knowing, okay, this triggers the story, so I'm going to do everything else first so I don't miss something, then do that. If the game instead tells me, go find where the story is, that's going to be my main task instead. Disco Elysium's first 10 hours were scientifically curated by the greatest minds of our generation to be the worst possible gameplay experience for me specifically. There is so much fucking dialogue in this game, and it's all incredibly well written, like truly fantastic. But I was aimlessly wandering, trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do for 2 full in-game days. I talked to literally every single person on the first day, each individual conversation taking anywhere from 10 to 45 minutes of my real, actual human time, which I can't ever get more of, and then I'd go, yeah, that didn't progress the story at all. For 10 hours. Now, the main reason for that is that you can't actually progress the story until day 2, and the game doesn't tell you that. So the entire first day, I was gaining information on the setting, sure, but I didn't progress the story in any real way because I couldn't. I'm not even necessarily saying that this is bad design, although I am. Just that it's specifically made to infuriate me. If I didn't have so many people telling me it gets better, I don't know if I would have finished it, but I am glad I kept going. The game really picks up after that first third, with a lot of thought put into its world and characters. The latter 20 hours had me fully engrossed and I never wanted to put the game down, to the point where I did end up doing basically all the side content. I wish I could put it higher, but if I didn't enjoy a full third of my time with the game, even B+ is generous. And at this point, I was fully done with playing long RPGs again. I also wanted to clear out my Steam library, so I decided to play 1 full game per day, every day, for a week, starting with Inscription, which I played on Halloween. I also am not going to say anything about it, aside from you should play it yourself and find out why I'm putting it in A tier. There is nothing I could say that wouldn't completely spoil it, so just try it out. Day 2 was What Remains of Edith Finch, which was okay. Tells a nice story and gets itself over with quickly, B tier. Day 3 was Fury, which I quite liked. I played on normal and only a couple bosses really gave me any trouble, but it was super enjoyable throughout. Really good boss simulator, B+. Day 4 was a game I've owned since like 2015, a story about my uncle. I do not think there's anything I could say I really like about this game. The platforming is fine for the most part with one god-awful room, and the story is pretty basic and by the books. C tier. Day 5 was my beloved No Straight Roads. When I first started this game, I thought it was quintuple S tier and easily Game of the Year material. The setting, atmosphere, music, character design, story, everything about this game starts so incredibly, which is why it's such a shame that it loses a lot of that steam towards the end. The game slides from S to B by the time the credits roll, but that still puts its average at a solid A. I really wish this game held on to that spark from start to finish. There was so much potential. Also, the game never explains why all the roads are gay. On day 6, I played Lottlenot, which is a nice comfy game about cleaning up the ocean and playing with little sea creatures called Lottles. You clean up the world for them, and then you could feed them and evolve them. It's like the Chow Garden from Sonic Adventure. It's not gonna blow your mind, but honestly, it's S tier. It executes its ideas flawlessly, and was one of the only games this year I felt compelled to 100%. And on day 7, I tried, God help me, I tried to play Jet Set Radio. I've heard tales of this game since before I could read, and man, I just do not think it's that good. It doesn't help that I played the Steam version, which apparently sucks, but I really could not get behind the aesthetic or the controls, and it ended up being one of the very few games this year that I started and didn't finish. I'm very sorry to all my Jet Set Radio fans, but this game is C tier. Over the course of the entire year, I slowly worked my way through Persona 5 Tactica, and let me tell you, it really doesn't hold a candle to Persona 5, let alone Strikers. After I beat it, I played around with the harder difficulties and found that it could probably have been much more interesting if I didn't play on normal mode, but that's how I experienced it, and it was okay. It's enjoyable if you want more Phantom Thief goodness, but overall it's pretty formulaic, B tier. Now there was another game I played at this point, but we'll talk about it at the end. Once I was done with it, it was getting close to Thanksgiving, so I wanted a quick game to play before I went home for the weekend. Fez was a great choice for that. I played it a bit years ago, and I decided to go back and finish it this time. I wasn't expecting how short it ended up being, but honestly I didn't mind. It's got a fun gimmick and it doesn't overstay its welcome, B+. Now while I was home I didn't have my PC, so I was relegated instead to starting a new Switch game. Of the many I have that I haven't played, I picked Katamari Damacy. Or like Katamari Damacy C tier, I'm sorry guys. I love the music and the premise and just how weird and out there the game is, but I just did not vibe with the controls. I'll come back and give it another shot sometime, I promise. My Thanksgiving break thoroughly wasted, I came back and decided to actually play Mind Over Magnet, the GMTK game. And it was pretty okay. It's just kind of an alright puzzle game that's really short. It doesn't waste your time at all, but I found most of the puzzles pretty easy. Overall, I'd give it a B. It's perfectly fine for a first game, I think. And at this point, someone on my friends list that I haven't talked to in over 3 years randomly gifted me the king of games from this year, Balatro. I don't think I need to sell this game to you guys. You already know, shit's A tier. Yeah, I didn't vibe with it quite as much as other people seem to have, but I still really enjoyed my time with it. At this point, I said, alright, I've played enough shorter games as a buffer, it's time for some real shit. Miryu was thinking of doing a collab with me discussing AI the Somnium Files last year, so I bought it, and I never really got that far. I don't really know why either, I liked what I played. I picked it back up and man, there's some stuff that I don't like, but overall, this shit is great. It's one of the very few murder mysteries where I genuinely didn't know who the killer was until the very last second, because every time I thought it had to be someone, they died. I'll leave it there to avoid spoilers, but it's an easy A tier experience. After that, I also finally got around to picking up Cuphead on sale, and honestly, it was a lot easier than I expected. I was prepared to really grind out a lot of the bosses, but I beat it in less than 8 hours. But I mean, still, come on, it's Cuphead. The animation, the music, everything, A tier. At this point, we're nearing time for me to head home for Christmas and the end of the year, so I had to really move fast for my last 2 games. The first one I finished was Nine Souls, which was a sleeper hit for me. I've seen a few people praising it, but not nearly as many as I think there should be. It's another indie Metroidvania with a super unique aesthetic and parry-based combat inspired by Sekiro, the only good FromSoft game. It's pretty linear for a Metroidvania, but it trades that in so that it can tell a fully fleshed out narrative with dialogue and character growth, instead of spending the whole game building lore and having the only story beat be at the end. I really like that narrative too. The main character's views feel pretty complex and different from what you would expect, and the story isn't afraid to make him have opinions and do things the player won't necessarily agree with. The Taopunk aesthetic of the game is also gorgeous. I don't think I've ever seen a game that looks quite like it, or any other media for that matter. The combat is fast and tough as nails, but super satisfying to conquer. I do have some minor nitpicks, but that's all they are, nitpicks. None of them really significantly impact the quality of the game, which is overall very worth your time. While I initially had it an A, on reflection, I think an S tier is justified. It's just good. The other game I finished before I went home was another game I tried years ago, before I was an RPG fan, Final Fantasy IX. I only just barely squeezed it in before heading back home for Christmas, to the point where I put off packing to make sure I could finish it. The day before. I'm a functional adult, I promise. I think basically every aspect of this game is stronger than 12, but not quite as good as 7 to me. I didn't like the side content quite as much, and the cast was fun, but didn't quite hit the same. The main villain being a femboy twink is funny, but I mean, come on, he can't compare to Sephiroth. Still though, with a solid story and fun gameplay, it's an A-tier experience. And now, back home for the holidays, I had a lot of time on my hands. Enough time even for 2 last games. I decided one of them would be a replay and one would be a new game, and for the new game, I picked Bloodborne. My brother has been begging me to play it pretty much since I got it for him for Christmas a few years ago. He's been obsessed with the game ever since, to the point where, and this is actually true, he and my sister have been working together to write a crossover fanfiction where the characters from Octopath 2 find themselves in the world of Bloodborne. I'm dead serious. It's real. And honestly, it's pretty good. Anyway, I think Bloodborne is a good game overall, but after years of hearing people call it the best PS4 game, the only reason to get a PS4, saying it's a crime that the game was never ported to PC, man, it is not all that. It's a serviceable B+ game with some issues holding it back for me. Now, some of those issues are things people will disagree with me on. I don't like the RPG leveling system in any of the Souls games. I don't like how slow the main character moves, and I hate how parrying works. It should come as no surprise then that the only FromSoft game I've liked from start to finish was Sekiro. Super fast main character with a cool as shit grappling hook and no stupid ass leveling for me to overthink. If I die in other FromSoft games, I think, oh, did I build too little bulk or too little damage? Is my weapon not good enough against this boss? Sekiro has one weapon and no leveling, so I know, with no room for doubt, that if I lose to a boss, it is for no other reason than that I suck complete ass at the game. Back to Bloodborne though, I hate the way parrying is explained to the player, mainly because it isn't. The game tells you, if you shoot with good timing, you can stagger enemies. What it doesn't tell you is that not every enemy can be staggered, and even on enemies you can parry, not every attack is parryable. How do you know which is which? Try and fail over and over again with basically no feedback. There is no indication whatsoever for if an attack can be parried. Well, I mean, okay, there's some consistency in bigger enemies can't be parried, except for the ones that can. But the game doesn't clue you into this either, so you really just have to die 50 billion times until you figure it out. It really feels like, hey Bloodborne, did I miss the parry timing, or is that attack unparryable? Why don't you try parrying it 6 more times at different timing to find out? Fuck you. Your guy also takes a second to pull out the gun whenever you press the button, which fucks with the timing. There's quite a few enemies with attacks that can be parried, that it seems like the game wants you to parry, but because there's a delay on the input, you have to be pressing the button basically before the enemy starts the attack to hit it properly. But these are all minor issues, really. The bosses mostly being huge monsters that aren't interesting to fight, the stupid two-hand swap attack constantly getting me killed because I was trying to dash back to give myself time to swap to one-handed, and the game thought I wanted to do this piece of shit attack. Seriously, I can't even think of a time when I would want to do this attack on purpose. Why is it so easy to do on accident? These things bother me, but not that much. Bloodborne doesn't have any one major issue that I think holds it back. Rather, it has 100 smaller issues that drag it down to its B+ ranking. I know I'm being pretty negative towards this game too, and I'm sure I'm gonna get a lot of get good comments despite not finding the game overly difficult, but I should stress I think the game overall is good. I was just left with a lot of negatives along with the positives that I wanted to talk about somewhere, and it turns out that somewhere is here. Now, if you thought shit-talking Bloodborne destroyed your faith in my taste in games, just wait. The other game I decided to play while home for the holidays was the game that got me back into RPGs, a contender for my favorite game of all time that I replay pretty much once per year. Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Yes, really. Now, at some point I want to make an entire video about this game, so I won't say too much about it here, but really I just want to say, if you heard me say I like this game and lost basically all respect for my opinions, I get it. If you've played this game and didn't like it, I probably agree with most of your criticisms. I think part of the reason I love this game so much is because of the issues I have with it. It makes it so much more interesting to think about and discuss with people. If I had as few issues with this game as I do with Xenoblade 1, I honestly don't think I'd like it as much. This game is definitely not for everyone, and there are a lot of things in it that I hate, but that just makes me feel that much stronger about the parts that I love. You can accuse this game of a lot of things, but one thing it isn't is lacking in personality. Last but not least, the game I played before Fez and put off talking about until now. If you do anything after watching this video, if you consume any media as a result of it, let it be Until Then. Made by a small Filipino studio, the game has gorgeous pixel art, an incredible story, and, hands down, the best cast of anything I consumed this year in any medium. Its characters make me feel exactly what it was like to be a kid at that age, good and bad, and their relationships can so closely mirror some of mine, it's terrifying. As an American playing a game set in the Philippines, It's interesting to see all of the ways our cultures differ in ways the game doesn't need to acknowledge. The differences in architecture, decorations, how we celebrate the same holidays. It's amazing to see these things not as someone explaining them to me, but as the developers experience them. These things aren't mentioned not because they aren't cool, but because they're so normal to the people making it that they never think to bring it up. There's plenty of Western media that shows off other cultures and places, but they frequently Westernify it so that people from the West can relate to it more. Things are the way they are, and until then, because they're made by people from a culture that I don't know that well, with no production board to tell them to change things to be more Western, and seeing the differences in daily life in that culture is fascinating. The story hits so much harder than I thought it would going in. It's not enough for it to be insanely emotionally resonant, it also plays with its structure in a way that I've never seen before and refuse to spoil. I don't think I can sell the game more strongly than by telling you that when Miryu played the game in early 2025, it took her 19 hours to beat. 14 of those were spent crying, and that's just the time spent crying while playing the game. The obvious crown jewels, though, are the characters. All of them feel so much like real people, I cannot even begin to describe it. I don't just feel like I know the characters, I feel like I've met them in real life. Mark's relationship with Kathy is literally my relationship with Miryu, and we both knew that within seconds of the two interacting. It's incredible how little time the game needs to make you instantly understand the relationships between its characters, and it somehow manages to do that without compromising the depth of those relationships. It feels like the instant two characters interact, their chemistry is obvious for every single pairing. Okay, I'm gonna talk about spoilers, so skip to here to avoid, but man, after playing some of the game again for footage, I have to gush about Kathy because she deserves the fucking world. She is precious from the moment she's on screen, and it's instantly established that while she and Mark pick on each other, she's genuinely constantly pushing for him to be better. And when he finally finds his spark, you can see the conflict in her eyes. The third of their group, Rydell, has already started drifting away, and with no words, you can tell how much she doesn't want to lose Mark too. But she pushes that down because it's not right to root against your friend, and she knows it. Even still, you can see Mark meeting other people, branching out, ignoring her in ways he doesn't even notice. And the game doesn't have to tell you how she feels because even on a 20x20 sprite, you can see clear on her face just how destroyed she is, that he abandoned her on a night she cared this much about. And even still, she puts that aside immediately. She even visits him that same night and doesn't bring it up even when he continues getting distracted because she's constantly putting her friend's happiness ahead of her own. It's so obvious that she's not okay, that something is wrong, that Mark and Rydell are her safe space, her real family, the one place she can feel some semblance of stability, and she is willing to give all of that up to let them chase their passions. I love her to pieces. She deserves absolutely everything from everyone and is just about the single best friend you could possibly ask for. I am so sad that I missed out on the plushie run they did for her, and now my collection will never feel complete. This game means a lot to me. It's a game where no matter what I write, I never feel like I'm doing it justice, so I'll leave it with this. This was easily my favorite game from 2024, and it's not even close. If you choose not to play it after watching this video, I will personally murder you. Alright, that's all the games I played. Now let's talk anime. I felt like I didn't watch much anime last year, but then when I tallied everything up, there were over 20 shows on here, plus a few movies. The reason I felt that way might be because I didn't finish all of them, so let's start with those. First up, Wacky TV Na Na Na. I found this show one day by deciding to scroll all the way down to the bottom of the Crunchyroll popularity page just to see what was down there, and I have to say, yeah, it definitely deserves to be down there. Even after watching half the show, I still couldn't tell you what it is. Right after that, I watched the first episode of Monster Girl Doctor because my friend wanted to see the adaptation of a manga they really like. Unfortunately, it quickly became apparent that this is a Rosario Vampire style adaptation, where they decided instead of actually adapting the manga, they wanted to make it into a harem series. The manga sounds cool, with actual discussions of the physiology of the different species, but from this first episode, this definitely isn't that. D tier. We also watched 2 episodes of The Misfit of Demon King Academy, and it was really funny to laugh at, but that also got old really fast.
Show doesn't really have much staying power, C tier. Ah, yes, the Deer Girl anime. I thought it was funny at first, but I don't know, I got tired of its brand of comedy pretty quick. C tier again. And one day when my friend and I were between shows, we tried the stories of girls who couldn't become magicians. We only watched the first 2 episodes of this one, but I really dig the art style. The story was interesting enough that I might go watch more later, but just off what I've seen, it's C tier. I also tried, on my own time, to finally get into Dragon Ball Super. I watched it when it was being aired on Toonami, but I fell off around Golden Frieza, and this time I didn't even make it that far. It is a bold strategy to have your new series start with filler episodes, though, I must say. I know it gets better later, but quite frankly, I am not sitting through the terrible start to get there. D tier. Yeah, there was a reason I barely watched any of these shows, huh? Now, I did actually watch a few anime movies this year. First and foremost being a rewatch of Digimon the Movie 2000. This movie is exactly as stupid as I remember it as a kid, and I love it to pieces. It's still C tier, but holy hell, man, the nostalgia. I also finally got around to watching The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, having already seen a few of Hosoda's other works. I'd give it a B overall. I liked it okay enough, but I also didn't really resonate with it that much. The other big anime movie I finally watched was Paprika, which, sure was something. The movie is such an interesting experience in terms of its visuals. The last act didn't really make sense, I feel. Like, they just actually didn't set up that it was even possible, but the overall plot was tight and made enough sense, I guess. It also feels like a goddamn fever dream from start to finish, and I respect that, B+. Moving right along, let's get to the stuff I rewatched this year, starting, of course, with Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. Yeah, it's S tier, come on. Although, I do have a fun fact. This is actually the 8th or 9th time I've seen the full series. Start to finish. All 64 episodes. Basically, anytime I met somebody who said, yeah, I want to get into anime, but I don't know where to start, I would go, yeah, I can do another Fullmetal Alchemist rewatch. It's not the GOAT for nothing. I also rewatched some early Naruto with a friend who hadn't seen it, and man, it's better than I remembered. Naruto and Sasuke have a great dynamic, and everything up to the end of the Chunin exams is just fantastic shonen. I was expecting it to have fallen off a bit, but nah man, A tier. Oh yeah, I also rewatched Bocchi the Rock and Hibike Euphonium Season 1. Bocchi is a solid A, but honestly, I was surprised how much less I liked Hibike Euphonium on the rewatch. It's just B tier for me now. After that, looking for another show to watch with that same friend, I rewatched all of Mob Psycho 100, and yeah, of course it's S tier. Even beyond the characters, the animation, the story, I just love what the show has to say. Like, yeah, if you aren't happy with who you are or where you're at, you bust your ass to change it. The world isn't gonna suddenly change around you to make you special. You gotta work for and earn that shit. Now, over the course of about a week and a half, I rewatched the East Blue Saga of One Piece with a friend who hadn't seen it before, and man, it is still S tier, baby. I have a lot of issues with the current manga, but we'll talk about those when we get there. Anyway, it should come as no surprise that I love early One Piece. The characters, the setting, the music, it's all just fantastic. I'm especially a fan of the watercolor aesthetic used for most of the backgrounds. I know the modern anime has come back around to looking great since Wano, but there was a long stretch there after the switch to digital animation where the show, at least for me, struggled to come anywhere close to this good old hand-drawn style. In any case, let's get into the new stuff that I watched and finished this year, and oh boy, this one is really gonna piss some people off. Anohana is not as good as you remember it being. Spoilers for this show specifically, skip to here to avoid, but oh my god. The entire first 7 episodes are basically a complete waste of time, made necessary only by the supernatural stupidity of the main duo. Like, okay, the main guy is haunted by the ghost of his childhood crush, who died abruptly after falling into a river and tore their friend group apart. I like that. There's good potential for drama there, and at times, the show really delivers on that thought. Everyone has reacted differently to her death, and some people don't take too well to the idea of her only appearing before him, convinced he must be making it up. The issue with that setup is that she's clearly capable of interacting with the world around her. Like, she can make cookies and play video games and everything. For the entire first 7 episodes, the drama is built around the friends not believing that she's really back, and the entire time I kept thinking, I mean, why is she just standing there? Why doesn't she just like pick something up and drop it, or do literally anything to let them know that she's there?
Even if she wouldn't think of that, surely the main guy isn't that stupid that he wouldn't think of it. Eventually, I just assumed that she could only interact with the world if nobody was around, or that it was otherwise impossible to resolve the conflict that way. An assumption that was upended in episode 8 when she does exactly that by writing in a book in front of them to stop them from fighting. The entire first 7 episodes are a complete waste of time that could be removed from the show entirely and you'd lose almost nothing. Okay, well that's a little mean. There are things in these episodes that I like, but all those episodes are undercut by the thought of, well, why don't they just do this incredibly easy thing? Are they stupid? Which they then do end up doing for no reason other than the plot wanted them to do it now. I say all of this, but I should mention, the show still almost got me with its last scene. I think part of what makes me so angry at it is how much better it could have been if it just respected the intelligence of its viewers. This shit is D tier, and I am not sorry. It's truly amazing how easy it is for me to throw all of my goodwill and reputation into a large fire. Completely unrelated, Demon Slayer. For quite a while now, Demon Slayer has been my favorite comedy anime, and that is not because it's trying to be one. Every time it does something that could be cool, it undercuts itself immediately by giving one of the worst explanations in anime history, or having some other asinine twist happen, or just immediately undoing the cool thing that it did. I honestly have a hard time saying I dislike Demon Slayer, but I like it in a so bad it's good way, because finding out how it's going to trip over its own dick this time is actually quite entertaining. That being said, I'm only ranking the most recent season, and it was pretty tame actually. It's a pretty generic training arc, so there wasn't really that much for them to screw up. It was executed okay, and I guess I enjoyed my time with it somewhat. B tier. Another show I watched just to have something to fill time, Ranking of Kings was an experience, and not one I can say I'm particularly fond of. For like half the show, I kept thinking that the main villain's motivations didn't really make sense, as though I had missed an episode where they explained their true motives. Now, that turned out to be half true, because the full explanation is basically at the end of the season, after all of the emotional stakes are over. I thought the main kid's power was kinda interesting, but also way too broken, and overall, I don't know, I just didn't really vibe with it. C tier. Zom 100 though, that one was a good time. It's such a fun, refreshing take on a zombie apocalypse. It's rare you get to see that kind of scenario treated with this kind of positivity, and it's so much fun. Now, I do think it loses a bit of steam in the second half, and some of the humor got old fast, but I had a good time with this one overall. B+. I have been watching Mushoku Tensei since it started airing, and it has been one of my favorite shows to keep up with. Usually. The first core of Season 2, which aired in late 2023, was a perfect case study in how to throw all of your writing skills directly into the nearest dumpster and incinerate all of the goodwill you built up for your main character too. In nearly every episode spent at the school, I felt like every single member of the cast just stopped acting like any reasonable person would in service of telling the most stupid anime story I've ever seen. Now, thankfully, the second core, which we're actually ranking here, reclaims a lot of lost ground. Oh, spoilers, by the way? It's nice to see Rudius, whose first major arc was about overcoming the trauma that caused him to be a shut-in, get to try to help his younger sister when she starts suffering from the same struggles. I do wish the show didn't decide to go the harem route. So much of the appeal of the show early on was watching Rudius grow out of his shitty, lecherous side and become a better person. I would have liked it if he completed that arc by deciding to stay faithful to Sylphie, but I guess this world has a different culture and that kind of thing is okay. I do appreciate his sister being furious with him though, and I kinda hope that there are more consequences for this decision that aren't obvious right now. Overall though, the show was just a great time as always, and it gets an easy A tier. Also, man, that Father's Day episode was a trip. Konosuba's another show I've been watching since it started airing. I haven't read the light novels or watched much of the Megumin spin-off, but I'm fine with that, at least for now. This season, it was okay. The plots were fun and a lot of the jokes landed pretty well. I really don't like that they keep will they won't they-ing Kazuma and Megumin. It's just a trite, generic trope in any media, but my main complaint is a bit more esoteric, I guess? I just have a difficult time convincing myself to watch the next episode, and it holds the series back a bit in my eyes. It's a criticism I share with The Devil is a Part-Timer, which we'll talk about later, but that show doesn't suffer from it nearly as bad. I'm not sure what it is about Konosuba that makes me feel that way, but it ends up dragging the show down to B tier, at least for me. One day when I was looking for something to kill some time, I decided to finally pick up Solo Leveling, because everybody was talking about it. The show isn't very new or exciting from its premise. In fact, I feel like I've seen 100 shows just like it. It's exactly the kind of generic wish fulfillment bullshit that people write off all anime for. This show is trash.
but it's my kind of trash, baby. A tier.
For largely the same reason, I picked up Apothecary Diaries, and it really stuck. I've heard people say it's basically Anime House, and yeah, I see it from what I know about that show. I like that the main girl really seems just completely uninterested in anyone of the opposite sex. It's very refreshing to see a character be so clearly ace-coded. Watching her figure out mysteries and medical issues is genuinely a great time, and I'd strongly recommend the show to basically anyone. A tier. So my friend and I decided to pick up The Devil as a Part-Timer because we knew about the reverse isekai premise ahead of time, and it just seemed, I don't know, kinda interesting. It's not gonna blow your mind, but it was good fun, B+. Now, they're a huge Dragon Ball fan, and I like Z, so we picked up Dragon Ball Daima when it started airing, and it was a shocker. It's more of a spiritual successor to the original Dragon Ball than Z, and honestly, I think that's great. It really feeds into my love of exploring interesting fictional worlds, seeing cool places, and meeting cool people. It's just been fun to watch week to week, and it easily claims a spot in the A tier. Frieren is also A tier. I don't really have much to say about it that hasn't been said, really. It's a novel fantasy premise executed extremely well. The biggest shock of this year, though, was when on a whim, my friend and I decided to put on the first episode of Ika Musume, or Squid Girl. Holy shit, what a ride. This show is completely insane. Like, okay, Squid Girl ends every one of her sentences with degeso in Japanese to make her sound more like a squid in the way Japanese media tends to do. For both the sub and dub, whatever psychopaths translated this made the decision that this means that every single line she says has to be a squid pun, even if they don't make any sense. I'm sure it's partly because of the friend I watched it with, but this is one of my new favorite experiences that I've had with anime. I would not trade it for the world. This shit is an easy S tier and is so close to being my favorite show from this year, but unfortunately I also finally watched Jujutsu Kaisen. I remember when Jujutsu Kaisen first started airing. I watched the first episode and went, wow, that sure was okay. It was well executed, but nothing I haven't seen before. When I said that to someone in a Discord call, they said, if you could watch all of season 1 and still hate it, I'll give you $50. And I mean, $50 is $50, you know? So I watched up through episode 6 and thought, wow, that sure was okay. It was well executed, but nothing I haven't seen before. And when I told the person that, they said, oh, well, I'm only gonna give you the money if you hate it. And I'm like, well, I mean, I never said that I hated it, even at the start. And they said, nope, them's the rules. So I decided it wasn't worth it and just dropped the show. This year, on a whim, I gave it another shot, and oh my god, it gets so much better right after that point. They introduce a new villain with a cool power and a much more interesting dynamic with the main character. The new characters become much more wacky and fun. They start really challenging John Anime emotionally in a way that so many shows promise but don't deliver on. And then season 2, oh my god. The opening flashback arc is great characterization for Gojo that makes you actually care about him, instead of him just being a win button. And then the show starts being completely unafraid to kill off random citizens and central characters on screen, right in front of you. The Shibuya incident is some of the best shonen I've ever seen, and after years of laughing at people calling the show peak, I finally get what they mean. I've heard the manga gets much worse right after where season 2 stops, and I cannot wait to see how they ruin it. Alright, that's all the anime, but before we get into manga, I want to take a short detour to talk webcomics. Webcomics are a weird one for me because all the ones that I read, I've been reading for over a decade. I used to read more, but they all ended over time. They basically serve as little distractions in moments of free time. If I have a free minute at work, if I'm going to the bathroom, any moment where I'm just a bit bored, I pick up my phone and just read what the new pages are. They're sort of like comfort media in that way. Their purpose is just to be there. I'm not looking for fantastic stories, more just a comfy vibe and some characters to eat some time with. First on my list is Ménage à Trois. Trois? Threesome in French. This is exactly the kind of raunchy stuff I would have loved when I first started reading webcomics, but honestly, even today I think it's fun enough. B tier. Definitely not something I would read in public though. Between Failures is also okay. I like the characters, but I only somewhat vibe with the art. I honestly don't really have much to say about it beyond that. It can be pretty relatable and fun, but it can also lose my attention a bit at times. Overall, I'd also put it in B. Misfile is a series I saw get ragged on a bit years ago, but I actually quite like it. The Hell High stuff, which is effectively just a second series, has been really fun so far. There's been a lot of intrigue surrounding the way things work and what this asshole has been doing, and honestly, that's a bit of a complaint. I feel like we've gotten nothing but questions and no answers yet, despite Hell High having run for a few years now. Typically, I'd expect more of a back and forth where each answer in turn begs more questions. Now, that's not too much of a criticism, especially since I'm sure I don't remember everything since I only read it every once in a while, but the characters are more than enough to make up for it anyway. I think the setting is a pretty interesting take on hell, and I like the shenanigans everyone gets up to, both serious and not. It is also insane to me that the author can put out a comic every single day while working a job, and they've been doing it for years now. That shit does not make sense to me. Anyway, B+, I enjoy it. Questionable content, baby. This is the very first webcomic I ever started reading. Honestly, incredible that it's still running 5 pages a week. As such, it holds a special place in my heart. The art, the characters, the setting, it all just oozes nostalgia to me. Even without that lens though, I really just vibe with it, you know? It's the first piece of media I remember seeing that had a trans character in it, and I remember her telling the guy she was dating and him being cool with it, and I remember not really knowing what she was talking about. I mostly wondered, what's that? Why is this such a big deal if the guy doesn't seem to care? I was an innocent soul. Anyway, yeah, I really like this comic, A tier. Even up against all the manga I read, all the artists drawing comics for one of the biggest comic publications in the world, El Gunis Shive is still in the running for my favorite comic of all time. This is another thing I've considered making a video about because I just love it to pieces. I wish I could talk to the characters, live in its world, experience its magic system. This is my comfort setting. If I could pick any fictional setting to live in for the rest of my life, of course I'd go with One Piece, I mean, come on. But EGS comes in at a very close second. I thought the series was pretty good when I first picked it up, but it's only grown on me over time. There's something special about reading a long-running series, especially one as personal as a webcomic. You can see not just the improvement in art, but over time you can watch the creator grow as a writer and as a person through their characters. And given that I'm less than 4 years older than this comic, there is a lot of time to over. You get to watch the characters go from being pretty basic and honestly a little phobic at times to a point where more than half the cast is somewhere on the LGBTQ spectrum. And not in a way where that's their whole personality or by retconning them. They just learn more about themselves as the series goes on, as teens tend to do. Basically, everyone in the main cast explores human relationships through a different lens, and it's always fascinating and delightful to see them mature. You get to watch the art go from, we'll call it very basic, to honestly one of my favorite art styles, full stop. Like I said, I've considered giving this its whole own video, so I won't go on too much longer, but suffice to say, I like EGS. It's my favorite webcomic, and it's not even close. If I was forced to give up every webcomic but one, you already know which one I'm picking. EGS also comes with a little side comic called EGS NP, featuring little non-canon and sort of canon and sometimes non-canon that Dan later decides are canon stories. It's nothing incredible, but it is more of the characters that I love, so it gets a B+. That's all the sort of but not really manga, so now let's talk about the actually yes definitely manga. Basically all the manga I read last year was through the Viz Media Shonen Jump page. God, I really need to branch out. And honestly, I recommend it as a service. They make the first 3 and most recent 3 chapters of every ongoing series free, so if you're already caught up, you don't even have to pay for anything. Even if you aren't caught up, full access to their entire catalog is only $3 a month, so it's easy and cheap to catch up on whatever you want and then continue reading it for free. I'm not even sponsored by them. In fact, I'm almost certain that they're going to take this video down for having manga panels in it, but I just think that this is a great value for money. Now, there are a few magazines conglomerated onto this page. The primary Shonen Jump magazine and a bunch of their side publications. Despite there being no visual difference, it's actually pretty easy to distinguish between them because the main stuff comes out all at once on Sundays. In any case, I'd appreciate it if you stuck around for this one. Aside from games, manga is the thing I wanted to talk about most, and the main reason I wanted to make this video at all. I'm talking about the stuff that didn't run in main Jump first, which means this time, we're actually starting with my favorite series. Beat and Motion is special to me. It follows a college student named Tatsuhiko rediscovering his passion for art after getting bullied out of it as a young kid. It is a very honest portrayal of what it's really like to create, and it captures the struggles and insecurities of it in the most real way that I've ever seen. This is probably my favorite piece of media from last year, just barely edging out until then. Where I love that game because of its characters, unique structure, and amazing look into a foreign culture, Beat and Motion is more personal. I have never before in my life consumed anything that felt more like my soul, the very fiber of my being,
was ripped from my chest and placed in front of me. If you create anything at all with the intent of showing it to others, you owe it to yourself to read this manga. It's just such an insanely relatable experience, and that's why it sucks so much that it was so obviously canceled. Now, that is speculation. I obviously don't know what's going on over at Jump HQ. They are well known for action series though, and between reports of low volume sales and lukewarm reception in Japan, it's not hard to see it. More damning than that though is just how much of a swerve the last 2 chapters were. We were basically in the middle of an arc, with Tatsuhiko growing and learning to deal with having his work not be received the way he thought it would, and then it was suddenly announced that the series would be ending after 2 more chapters and we make a hard pivot to get there as fast as possible. Certainly the ending isn't terrible, the series just clearly had so much more to say, and it destroys me that I'll never get to see where it could have gone. Even with the rushed ending though, I cannot possibly recommend this manga enough. It is certainly worth your time, at least. There, really isn't a good way to transition out of that, is there? Alright, let's pep it up. We'll talk about some of the other stuff that didn't run in the main magazine. First up, Astro Baby, and this one is a bit weird. There's aliens disguised as humans that eat people, blah blah blah. The main character is accompanied by a baby that's one of the aliens, but it's friendly, blah blah blah. What really stuck out to me was the times the manga delves into Cold War era propaganda films with its art, which I don't think I've ever really seen before. Honestly, I wish it did it more often. There's a lot of potential to grow, but right now it hasn't blown me away yet. B+. Okay, so Blade of the Moon Princess follows a moon princess with a sacred blade, whose mother is overthrown and she's sent down to Earth to evade capture. She's gotta become a great warrior or something and reclaim the throne, I guess? I don't know, the series was fine, but it didn't really hold my attention. B tier. Okay, here we go, Chainsaw Man. I rewatched the anime and then read the manga, and man, it is a weird one. I especially love how the series is fairly dark and oppressive most of the time, except for Denji and Power, who are just completely immune to the overall tone. The series was really fun and interesting in part 1, and then it split off into a second part after it moved out of the main Jump magazine, and man, I'm not sure I really get what Fujimoto was going for with part 2. I like it though, A tier. I have been reading and telling people to read Dandadan since chapter 1, because since chapter 1, there's been a moment in every single chapter that makes me stop and go, what the fuck am I even reading? It's wild and creative and original, and the anime seems like a pretty okay adaptation. I will say though, I do not blame anyone for not wanting to keep watching after that episode 1. That scene was something I just skimmed over when reading the manga, but really being forced to sit there with it just makes it really uncomfortable. Still though, it's always a great read week to week, A tier. Oh, Kaiju number 8, a mid manga with a mid adaptation. I don't know, man, I liked it for a while there, but really it just felt formulaic for most of its run. Just about everything the series has done, I've seen done before and done better. It's not bad by any stretch, and I still like it enough to read it week to week, but with all its missed potential, I can't justify putting it higher than B tier. Speaking of missed potential, Shoujo Null. This series had a cool world and premise, but it lost me kinda quick. It seems like that sentiment was shared amongst the public too, as it ended after only 33 chapters. I honestly don't remember too much about it, and I'm not gonna be bothered to reread it just for this. D tier. Now, I am not a big Magical Girl fan, so imagine my surprise when I found myself really liking Magilumiere Magical Girls Inc. It has this bizarre gimmick where the magic is written in computer code and run like programs, and magical girls are basically an enormous tech industry. It follows a girl who gets picked up by a small startup as she learns to become a magical girl full-time and what that means, which is an interesting spin for someone like me, with basically no familiarity with the genre besides 1 season of Sailor Moon. I've also heard it as an anime adaptation already, and overall I'd recommend it, B+. Now, one of the more interesting series I read last year was Marriage Toxin. The central gimmick is that the main guy is the head of a clan of assassins who specialized in poison, and while I say head, he's basically the only one left. His grandmother wants to make sure the line is passed down and says that if he's not gonna wife up, she'll ungayify his sister so that she will. Yup. Not settling for an arranged marriage though, Garo wants to actually find someone he can connect and settle down with. In pursuit of that, he teams up with a marriage scam artist to actually find out how to get girls to even talk to him. I like that the manga doesn't will they won't they the main two, because the scam artist is actually a guy who just cross-dresses so he can scam people indiscriminately. based. It also effectively eliminates him from the running since, you know, you can't have a kid, which would make Granny very mad. It's been a fun romp of seeing this stoic, silent badass have to figure out how basic human interactions work, with some great action to boot. B+ overall, but it could shoot higher if it impresses me later. If action isn't your thing though, I would recommend Shiba Inu Rooms. This is a cute slice of life manga about a girl who moves into a building haunted by talking Shiba Inu ghosts. The dogs are cute, the plots are fun, and the art is great. A tier for the fantastic comfy vibes. Now if you don't like action but you still love that shonen storytelling, I cannot recommend Shoha Shoten strongly enough. It's about a pair of kids learning to compete in manzai comedy, a form of Japanese stand-up typically performed as a duo. It's got fantastic artwork from Takashi Obata, you know, the Death Note guy. But the main draw of the series to me is just how goddamn funny it is. Basically all of the skits hit their mark. The author and localizers all nail the bullseye with this one. For most manga I recommend, I can pretty safely say, oh yeah, you can wait for an anime adaptation, it's fine. But comedy is so difficult to translate across mediums that I honestly dread how badly an adaptation could screw it up. There's just too many ways it can go wrong. In manga form though, this is S tier. It only comes out once per month, but it's the highlight every time. By now I'm sure everybody knows Spy Family, right? This is another one that I've been reading since it started, and it is good, but somewhere along the year I kinda dropped off reading it. Something about the adventures of the Forger started feeling a little samey to me after a bit. Still a good time, but not quite as good as some other stuff, B+. And then there's Wildflower. Some of you, particularly those who aren't blind, will notice I somehow got the name of the series wrong and didn't catch it in writing, reviewing the script, or recording, and I only noticed it when I actually went to go grab panels for B-roll. That says more about my thoughts on it than anything I could possibly write. And finally, if you're a rom-com enjoyer, there's You and I Are Polar Opposites. This series is basically exactly what it says on the tin, a rom-com manga about a guy who's too introverted to ever say what he really thinks, and a girl who's too extroverted to ever say what she really thinks. And when I say rom-com, I mean the pair get together in like chapter 1, and a lot of the stories are about the miscommunications that come from just how different they are or just cute things they do as an officially dating couple, which is extremely refreshing. Not much is out right now since Viz tends to drop the series in entire volumes all at once, but it's always a cute and fun read, B+. Okay, that's all the miscellaneous manga I read, now onto the main Jump stuff. We'll start with the shorter, newer stuff first and move into the big guns later. And first up is two manga I actually grandfathered in from 2023 because I just wanted to talk about them, starting with the Ichinose Family's Deadly Sins. So, I've been reading Jump weekly for a few years now, and after a while you start to develop a sort of sixth sense for when a series isn't doing too well. Typically either around chapter 7 or 8 when they're afraid they might get axed at the first review and start scrambling to put in twists or pivot to a different core appeal for their series, or around chapter 10 or 11 when they've been told they have 3 more chapters and it's time to wrap it up. It always hurts to see that happen to a manga you like, but Jump being this cutthroat is kind of what they're known for, and why they're able to consistently produce such massive series. I bring this up because when reading the Ichinose Family's Deadly Sins, I felt this happening as early as chapter 8. Already they were making twists that would doom most manga because the author has no idea where to go next. Twists that feel like they're there just to be a twist in order to increase popularity. It was looking extremely grim, and I had every confidence that this manga would end in the next 5 chapters. The Ichinose Family's Deadly Sins is 48 chapters long. And the best part about that is it isn't 48 chapters long because the author recovered from doing that twist. They kept making those kinds of twists over and over and over again for the entire run. Every 5 chapters I was convinced that the series was getting axed, only for it to pivot in a completely new direction. It's such a wild, unpredictable clusterfuck of a time, and I am here for it, baby. I have no idea what it's like to read the series while actually knowing where it ends definitively, but not knowing definitely made it much more enjoyable for me. Honestly, an A-tier experience. I wouldn't trade it for anything. Tenmaku Cinema, on the other hand, is on the complete opposite side of that spectrum, where I had no idea it was ending until 2 weeks after it had ended when I realized it wasn't getting updates anymore. A lot of authors write stories about different kinds of artists or sports when trying to get into Jump, and while a lot of the time they crash and burn, it's always cool to see into those other worlds. Getting breakdowns of how those kinds of art or sports work feels good, and is frequently the lifeblood of these kinds of series. Tenmaku Cinema does that for, obviously, cinema. From the creators of Food Porn, the series follows a young guy who is completely obsessed with movies. Like, literally all he does is watch movies with no desire at all to make one. He gets haunted by the ghost of a dead screenwriter, who of course was a prodigy, but was never credited or acknowledged at all, so nobody knows who he is. And now this kid has to make his movies to help him pass on? What the fuck? Honestly, my biggest gripe with the series is just that, the supernatural element. I think it would have been much stronger if the kid just wanted to make movies. They started building to that at some point, but the damage was done, the series only getting 21 chapters. However, in those 21 chapters, it never has to do any kind of crazy pivots or plot twists, and completely resolves everything it sets up with a satisfactory ending. That honestly speaks volumes about the duo behind it and their talent in this medium, and it means that I can fully recommend the series, no strings attached, as a quick little afternoon read. B+. Okay, now for the stuff that actually started this year, starting with Super Psychic Policeman Chojo. I dropped this one pretty fast as gag manga have to really catch my attention for me to read them, but I mean, it's not like what I read was bad. He's a psychic policeman who solves crime, just like the box says. I give it a C, but only because it's not really for me. Shadow Eliminators, I only read like 4 chapters of this, I think. It was another high schoolers fight invisible monsters to protect their friends thanklessly because no one will ever know manga, which has become far too prevalent, I think. It didn't do anything to hold my attention and then died after 19 chapters. D tier. Kyokuto Necromance is another high schoolers fight blah blah blah. Okay, you get it, right? This series at least fared better than Shadow Eliminators in my opinion. It only lasted 18 chapters, but I at least bothered to read it to the end, which is more than others can say. I'll give it a C tier entirely off the fact that I didn't drop it. Mama Yu Yu, on the other hand, is a series I hated to see cut short, but it did feel a little directionless. It had a cool concept where the world had one marked hero and one marked demon lord, but fighting had stopped and peace was declared between the two races. Then a demon lord from another world showed up and started dragging demon lords and heroes from other worlds into this main one. It allowed for a super colorful cast from all kinds of backgrounds and time periods to come together under one story, but unfortunately the series was cut short before it could ever really get off the ground. A shame, but at least it can get a B+ from me. Another series that I was not expecting to end until it suddenly did was Martial Master Asumi. It was building up to this big MMA tournament for the main character to compete in, and then it just skipped past that tournament and the series ended the next chapter. It was still a fun read, but I wish it could have had more time to build itself up. A tier. I also only just now got the joke that the series is titled Martial Master Asumi because the initials spell MMA. Anyway, Psych House is one of the comfiest manga I've ever read, and I'm so sad it didn't last longer. It's just a slice of life featuring a cast with superpowers, but the way they care for each other and the silly ways they use their abilities always made me crumple into a little ball of bliss. This is A tier, and I don't care what anyone else thinks. Generic sports manga about golf. Its name is almost a Kirby reference, and that is all it has going for it. D tier. You've heard of generic sports manga about golf. Now get ready for generic sports manga about ice skating. Yeah, also D tier. Astro Royale is a series I fully expected to be axed quickly. I didn't think it had much going for it. It stuck around for quite a while though, and it honestly grew on me over its run. There was a lot of untapped potential in its combat, and while it's only sitting in B tier, I look forward to seeing if this author puts out anything else. It's always nice when a series can surprise you over the course of its run. On the other side of that coin is Hakutaku. Man, this series could have been so good. One of my favorite manga is Bakuman, a meta manga that ran in Shonen Jump about a pair of young boys trying to write a manga to get it into Shonen Jump. Also, it was created by the Death Note duo. It's full of everything I talked about with Tenmaku Cinema, tons of little inside tips and insights into how the process of writing manga works from people who clearly know what they're doing because, you know. Hakutaku wants desperately to be Bakuman for game development, but between its a bit too generic main character and a main girl whose ability is basically just make every problem go away instantly so we never have to actually deal with any of the real challenges of game development, there's a little surprise that the series didn't take off. I wish it wasn't so, but it gets a C tier.
At any given time, Jump always tries to have 1 or 2 gag manga and 1 or 2 rom-coms, and Hima 10 falls into the latter category. I liked it when it first started, but I'm not a fan of them will they, won't they, 3 different girls with the main character at the same time. I know that's not uncommon for the genre, but it's just not really my speed. The artwork overall is great, but it's also gotten way too heavy on the fan service for my taste. That's really the whole issue with this series in a nutshell. For each thing that it does that I love, it also does something that I hate. I'll give it a B for now, but I could see it shooting in either direction at the drop of a hat. Sidcraft Love is a Mystery is just anime Sherlock Holmes. Its mysteries unfortunately only sometimes feel earned, but when they do, it feels good. It's always a great feeling for the detective to reveal something they noticed, and then you flip back and go, oh my god, that was there, I just didn't see it. Unfortunately, as the title suggests, we're doing more harem shenanigans, so between that and the mysteries only sometimes hitting for me, it's landing in the B tier for now. Another one that could go either way later. Imagine a world where magic spells are personified. They're actual creatures, and in order to acquire them, you have not to defeat them in combat, but to complete their magic trial, which could be as abstract as make me look pretty. This is the world of Ichi the Witch, and there's a lot of potential in there for fun battles that the series hasn't gotten to explore yet. It's exactly the kind of interesting world and conflicts that I love to see in fiction. It hasn't done enough to get higher than B+ yet, but I definitely think it could go higher if it doesn't get axed. Ooh, it's Pride from the future, and oh yeah, in the 3 months since I wrote that, this series has definitely found its footing. I'm not changing the ranking because these chapters weren't in 2024, but if I do this again next year and the series keeps this up, expect an A or even an S tier. Now, if you want a gag manga I actually enjoyed, check out Yokai Buster Murakami. The general concept is this guy is supposed to exorcise yokai, but he's too nervous to actually do it. So he brings along his friend, and his friend talks so much insane shit at the yokai that they just give up and lose the will to fight, allowing for an easy exorcism. It's a fantastic bit that honestly ran its course over the short run. I wouldn't really want more from the series. I loved it while it was here though, and it ended about when the joke was getting old. B+. Shinobi Undercover. Let's come back to this one. And instead, let's talk about my favorite new series from 2024, Ultimate Exorcist Kiyoshi. The creator worked as an assistant on One Piece for a few years, and you can tell, from the art to the designs to especially the humor, it's obvious they learned a lot from Oda. For example, Chapter 2 begins with Kiyoshi's graduation from the Exorcist Academy. As valedictorian, he's expected to give a big speech, and when the headmaster orders him to step forward, he's not there. He spent the entire night wide awake stressing over the social anxiety, and only fell asleep 30 minutes before he needed to leave. To add insult to injury, a demon lord shows up seeking revenge on him, and when the headmaster goes, ooh, yeah, he isn't here yet? The demon lord goes, but isn't today like really important for him? That's why I came today. It's got great action, fantastic art. The only thing I think is a bit lacking is its world, specifically the architecture. Overall, the art of the series reminds me a lot of Soul Eater in the way that it just oozes Halloween. Soul Eater, though, had this weird world with the crazy sun and moon and the bizarre buildings and whatever the hell this school is. Kiyoshi basically just has this one tower, and that's kinda it. Even if demons are supposed to be a secret, it feels like a world with characters who dress like this walking around should probably not just look like city Japan. That's a minor complaint though. Overall, the series is a joy to read week to week. I don't know how it can run long term without scaling its powers to insane levels, but the characters are more than charming enough to make up for it long term, I think. Easy S tier. Okay, this next one has a bit of a story attached to it. Ruri Dragon started way back in 2022, and basically the instant it began, I loved it. It has such a unique, relaxed vibe to it where... Okay, maybe I should explain a bit before I start losing it. So the main character, Ruri, wakes up one day to find horns growing out of her head. She asks her mom, and her mom says, oh, yeah, your dad's a dragon. Those are your dragon horns. I can tell you about it after school, but I gotta go to work. Mom of the year. So she goes to school, and this is where I started loving it. Everyone doesn't go, what? You're a dragon, holy shit, that's awesome, can I be your friend? Or, oh my god, you're a dragon, that's scary, run away! In fact, they initially don't even believe her. It isn't until she accidentally scorches someone's hair off breathing fire that people are like, oh shit. And then it's treated as more of an, oh, okay, cool thing. I love that, and it seems so much more like how people would actually react. Some people avoid her, some people think it's cool and ask questions, but nothing really feels overblown or overreacted. In fact, at times it feels a bit underreacted, but that's still a refreshing change of pace. There's no villain, there's no battles, just Ruri having fun slice-of-life adventures and learning about her dragon powers at school. The series ran for 6 chapters, and then got put on an indefinite hiatus for health reasons. Yup. My new favorite manga didn't even get an ending, it just vanished. Thankfully, in 2024, almost 2 full years later, Ruri is back to reclaim her throne, and there's been basically no drop-off in quality. This isn't my favorite manga in Main Jump, but it's close, and it easily clears the S tier benchmark. Now, Akane Banashi, that might be my favorite manga in Main Jump. We're moving on to the longer running stuff now, by the way. It's the same thing as Tenmaku Cinema, but this time about Rakugo. I didn't know much about Rakugo before reading this manga, outside of like 2 episodes of Joshiraku, but now it's the form of Japanese art I'm probably the most interested in. Outside of anime and manga, obviously. The idea of a performance with just one person sitting alone on a stage with their only prop being a fan, and they aren't allowed to stand up, and they have to tell a story with multiple characters is just fascinating to me. Definitely something I want to experience once I know the language better. Anyway, Akane Banashi is just a fantastically well-executed story about a girl making her way in the world of Rakugo and colliding against higher powers that don't want her to succeed. There's so much to love, from the characters to the world to the explanations of Rakugo stuff. One of the standouts for me is that whenever the series draws the characters in the Rakugo stories, they draw them in this traditional Japanese style. Basically everything about the series feels meticulously well crafted in that way, and I love wondering where the story is gonna go every week. Obviously it's S tier, and I can't wait for an anime adaptation. Okay, now Kagurabachi, So, it's good, but it doesn't really get me excited, if you know what I mean. Like, the world and the characters in the story are all interesting, and I enjoy reading it week to week, but it's not so interesting that I can't wait for the next chapter. When it's hype, but it's the moments in between that I could take or leave. It's like, if someone told me this was their favorite series, I would get it, I just wouldn't agree. I'm gonna give it a B+ for now. It's worth your time. I could see it getting an anime later too, but for me personally, it's not super resonant. Alright, now I'm sure you've heard of this one, Sakamoto Days. It's the hot new anime about a retired assassin who gave up killing out of love for his wife, but gets dragged back into the world of assassins after somebody puts out a hit on him. The anime seems well received, and the manga is pretty good too. The story and characters are okay, I suppose, but the draw for me is really the action. Sakamoto, and to a lesser extent Shin, don't have any specific weapons that they specialize in. Rather, they grab whatever happens to be near them and are constantly using the world around them to their advantage. This, coupled with the superhuman physicality of basically every character, allows all of the fights to be unbelievably dynamic. A random prop that was chilling in the background in one panel becomes a deadly weapon in the next. It's an exhilarating read for that, and I think the story and characters do their jobs well enough to get from fight to fight in a fun way, which is all I really want. It's not my favorite, but I do enjoy my time with it. A tier. Okay, now Kill Blue feels like the result of a common trend in Jump. That trend being, one manga gets successful doing something interesting, and then Jump greenlights 5 million other manga trying to do that exact same thing with minor differences. When it started, I thought Kill Blue was gonna be a ripoff of Sakamoto Days. Juzo Ogami, a middle-aged hitman, oh brother, is effectively forced into retirement after getting stung by a bee that causes him to become a middle schooler? Anyway, he can't really be an assassin like that, so his boss tells him, hey, my daughter is gonna start middle school next year, so why don't you enroll there and scope it out to make sure it's good? Which is bizarre, but what really drew me in is the main character realizing that he just fucking loves learning. He never attended school as a kid, so this is his first time really experiencing it, and he's loving every second. Then he ends up getting roped into joining the home ec club and finally learning to cook and clean, and it really is just him getting a second chance at what a real life is like. And of course, all kinds of shenanigans ensue that require him to use his assassin abilities, but that's rarely for actual combat. See, he becomes fast friends with Norin Mitsuoka, who is the heir to a large pharmaceutical company. She's tired of older and younger men constantly hitting on her for her money, so she decides to fake date Juzo because he's the only guy who doesn't seem to feel that way about her. Her dad then says, whoever can beat her current boyfriend at basically anything they decide becomes her new boyfriend, which gives plenty of setup for a wide variety of games to compete in. We've had baseball, cooking, surfing. At every opportunity, the manga goes to something completely different for its conflict, so it always keeps them fresh. I also very much appreciate that they aren't weird about Juzo and his friends. It is, yeah, a bit weird for a man his age to have friends at their age, but they mostly stay away from it aside from occasionally mentioning that he talks like a 40-year-old. Because he is one. More importantly, they establish very early on that Norin is not at all interested in Juzo as anything more than a friend, and that Juzo views her as more of a daughter figure than anything else, and I think that's fantastic. Okay, I wrote this in February, right before some, developments with Norin. I hope and pray that the series resolves this without getting any weirder, because oh my god, I would hate for something this good to be ruined like that. This could very easily get so weird, and they've thankfully sidestepped most of those issues, including fan service. Even when the manga became surfing focused for a few chapters, they avoided showing basically anything, which I appreciate. These characters are literally middle schoolers after all. I was so sure this manga would be hot trash after the gimmick was unveiled, but I've really warmed to it over time. It's actually become one of the manga that I look forward to the most every week, and so it easily secures an S tier placement. And now that we've talked about this, we can talk about Shinobi Undercover. Shinobi Undercover is to Kill Blue what Kill Blue is to Sakamoto Days. There's ninja that work for the government, and their job is to protect this important girl without her finding out. It's basically the same setup, but without the de-aging and with Hitman swap for ninja. This manga also has great characterization, but the fact that all of its conflicts boil down to actual combat involving main character guy means that so far the engagements have been on the whole less interesting. Not necessarily a bad thing for now, but I can see the series wearing itself out much faster. I'll put it in B+ for now, we'll see how it goes. And here we finally are. One Piece in the C tier. Why, how, who, me. I love One Piece. I always have, and I want to get that out of the way right here and now because I'm not putting it down there because I think it's bad. It goes down there because I really have not liked the direction of the series since the end of Wano. Moving forward, I'm going to be talking about the series under the assumption that you guys are at least caught up with the anime. Alright? Alright. If that's not you, just skip to the YouTuber section. Double bonus for me because you'll skip something even more embarrassing than what I'm about to do here. You have 3 seconds. Alright. The One Piece rant. Gear 5 is the single worst anime power-up I have ever seen in my life, and I've watched Bleach. Now, that's not in terms of the actual ability itself. I actually really like Goofy Luffy. Watching him bend both the world around him and his enemies' bodies to his will is really fun. I love the way he's constantly laughing and just having a great time. I love the stupid-ass Looney Tunes sound effects they use in the anime. I love the way he's animated in the anime. I love the new design. It's all great. I honestly have debated getting merch for it just because I love how fun it is. If I could have any one power from the show, it would be the Gum Gum Fruit, and that's not because, haha, funny main character, it's the strongest, but because it just seems like the most ridiculously fun to mess around with. And for the record, I felt that way basically since I started the series. That's not a Gear 5 thing. No, the reason I hate Gear 5 has to do with the everything else about it. Let's start with, why is the Gum Gum Fruit a Zoan type now? That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work like any other Zoan types. Why can he only transform when awakened? And why can't he become not made of rubber? The ability itself could have worked the exact same way, transformation and all, and still just been called a special paramecia. It still would have been stupid that the transformation was unique to it, but then at least we're not pulling a retcon as insane as changing what the name of the fruit has been for the last 1,000 chapters. Speaking of the real name of the fruit, this also completely destroys any presence the Gorosei had as villains. This fruit was revealed to have fought against the world government in every era, and they've never been able to get their hands on it, remember? They knew exactly what it was and what the wielder could do, and just did nothing about it the whole time. Luffy has to have been on their radar since Alabasta at least, so there's no way they didn't know this was going to happen. They just let him run free, even after everything he pulled at Enies Lobby, and especially Marineford. How am I ever supposed to believe that these guys are competent when the one guy they know is capable of defeating them is just allowed to run around and get stronger for years? Then there's the fact that the fruit now has a will of its own and chooses its wielder. I have never liked predetermined destiny in fiction, and this is just that, straight up. It effectively retcons everything that came before it.
Luffy was never an idiot who accidentally ate a devil fruit and had to make the most of a worthless power. He was destined from the start to always have awakened the fruit because he was chosen by it back in chapter 1. Part of the appeal of the show to me is that for most people, the Gum Gum fruit would fucking suck. It's awkward and hard to work with, and while it makes you immune to blunt force, there are other ways you can get hurt. The power is only as strong as it is because Luffy is who he is. Luffy's incredibly creative and fun ways to use his power are what let him come out on top over people whose abilities were pretty strictly better than his, like Katakuri. But oops, hold on, it turns out the Gum Gum fruit was actually the most specialist overpowered fruit the entire time, and we just didn't know it, and it's the only fruit that can stand up to the world government, and the last guy who wielded it is sung as the greatest hero in history. Why? Why couldn't Luffy just be strong because he worked for it? That he made a shit power his own and turned it into a great one through his own ingenuity? Why does he have to have been granted strength from on high, always been destined to make it out on top? Related, I also really don't like how Luffy is the second coming of Joy Boy. First of all, it feels rushed and like it came out of nowhere. Joy Boy was name dropped one time in Fishman Island and not mentioned again for over 300 chapters until the middle of Wano. More importantly, I wish Luffy could stand on his own, become king of the pirates on his own merits, and not because he's always been destined to make it there and destroy Fishman Island or whatever. Even back in Fishman Island, when the Sea King said, "No one has been able to hear us since Roger," I was rolling my eyes. I hate when the main character is special not because he works to get there, but because he has always had whatever special thing made the last person special too. When you bring destiny into your story like this, you significantly limit the overall direction that the story becomes able to take. I don't even think him being the second coming of Joy Boy would be a bad decision if it wasn't specifically tied to the fruit. Like, the descriptions of Joy Boy that we get paint him as a free soul, roaming the land and spreading smiles to all he visits, and yeah, that sounds like Luffy. If it was just, Luffy is doing things that the previous Joy Boy did, and he's earned the title through being the same kind of person and doing equally legendary deeds, I would have no issues with that. Instead, Oda has made it very explicit that being Joy Boy is tied specifically to Gear 5. Anyone who can awaken the fruit could be Joy Boy, even if they're a massive piece of shit and nothing like the original man. Luffy could literally be as black-hearted as Blackbeard, and it wouldn't matter at all because who he is as a character is completely divorced from his legendary status. Also related to a previous point, I don't like how it feels like the transformation was just given to him. Gears 2, 3, and 4 are all creative ways Luffy thought of to use his weird new body to overcome deficiencies in his combat abilities. He came up with them outside of combat and then implemented and worked on them until they stuck. For Gear 5, Luffy dies fighting Kaido and then just gets a transformation and a full heal, which feels cheap. Now, yes, there are systems in place to justify this. They explain that awakenings happen when your abilities in Haki reach a point that's compatible with the fruit, and they set up that Haki gets stronger during intense battles to the death like this. That justification, I think, worked much better in the fight with Katakuri. Luffy wasn't just given the ability to see a bit in the future, he decided, right in the middle of the fight, that he was going to put everything on the line in order to gain it, and slowly acquired it over the course of the fight by working for it. Once he did, he developed a new transformation, sacrificing power for the speed necessary to land hits by once again thinking of a new creative way to use his fruit. The fight with Kaido, though, Luffy was just fighting him as normal, getting used to a new way to use Haki, and then he dies, and then is randomly resurrected by a pretty much completely unrelated new transformation. I really can't think of a better way to describe it than cheap, especially when compared to what came before. Also, it's worth mentioning that the explanation that awakening happens when your level of Haki reaches what the fruit expects happens after the Gear 5 awakening. Then there's a criticism that's a bit more nebulous. It concerns not all the ways Gear 5 messed up what the story was, but the ways it will likely continue to mess up what the story will be. Because Gear 5 is so important, because Luffy is now the second coming of the most powerful man in history that warped the land to his whim, everything that happens now has to warp around that this has happened. Everything that is important now concerns the fact that Luffy is Joy Boy, and constantly ties back into how Luffy is the specialist boy in all the land. We've already seen this happening in the manga. Big things cannot simply be important because of what they are. Everything that is important has to tie back to Luffy now. It pits Luffy as the center of the universe, where before he was just another part of it. Now, obviously, Luffy has been getting closer to the center of the universe the entire time as he gets stronger. That's what the series is about. But what Gear 5 does is it effectively cheats Luffy past everything that was left, directly to the end point. It's no longer that Luffy is the central focus because he's king of the pirates, a man who defeated everyone who stood before him and claimed the One Piece for himself.
He's the central focus because he has the special power that only he can have. And it can't ever go back either. Because of this ability being so important, Luffy can now never be the most important because of who he is, because he will always be overshadowed by being the new Joy Boy, and I hate that. Just about the only thing they could do with this that I would love is have Blackbeard steal the ability in the final fight, only for Luffy to find a way to beat him with his own strength. Somehow, though, I don't think that's going to happen. I should also state, and I need to be careful with how I word this, I don't think Oda had this planned out for that long. At least, not the specifics. I don't really want to get too far into Oda's foreshadowing versus tying back to things later. That's honestly a whole other video, but I'll say this. I don't think he knew about this in Chapter 1, I don't think these panels in Skypiea are foreshadowing, and I don't think he knew he wanted this at the time skip, or even Dressrosa for that matter. I would believe Oda probably knew he wanted there to be a Gear 5 by Dressrosa. Luffy had to awaken his devil fruit at some point, but I don't think he knew this was the way he wanted to do it. There are pieces of this I think he had planned. You could convince me that Oda planned for Luffy to become Joy Boy's successor, and that the Gum Gum Fruit's awakening was going to be a transformation. That is a shonen trope after all, but those aren't really the things I have issues with. It's changing the name of the fruit, making it a Zoan type, tying Joy Boy to Gear 5. These are the decisions I have an issue with. I don't think he planned these out because they fall apart the instant you think about them in a way almost nothing else in the series does. And understand, that's me giving him more credit as a writer, not less, because I think that if he knew he wanted to write this for that long, he wouldn't have implemented it so terribly. The Awakening in general feels really rushed. Luffy spent the whole arc learning a new form of Haki to fight Kaido with, only for it to end up being almost completely irrelevant. There was definitely time during Wano for Oda to set this up much better, and he just didn't. There are things I believe Oda has planned. I believe him when he said he's always known what the treasure will be. I believe him when he says he's had the bare bones of the story planned out from the beginning, but it got longer over time as he thought of more cool stuff to add. That's what I think this is, because that's another form of storytelling that Oda is usually very good at. Oda frequently rereads his own work to check continuity, and this makes him very good at thinking of something cool and then going, how can I tie this back into the world? And looking back through what he's already written to see what he can connect it to. And that's not a knock against him, to be clear. The man is a fucking genius and usually so effortlessly able to link new things back to old, but I think this time he bit off more than he could chew. I can't prove it, obviously, I'm not him, but I think Oda thought of something cool, wanted to put it in his story, and did the best he could to fit his cool new idea into what he already wrote. Really though, whether or not this was planned doesn't really matter to me. Even if this was exactly what he wanted from the start, it wouldn't do anything to change how terribly it was implemented. I think what really confuses me though, is the people I keep seeing that say Gear 5 is peak fiction. What? How? To me, it so thoroughly destroys so much of what was good about One Piece. Is it just that the character is stronger now and therefore it's a good power-up? If you really love Gear 5 and you sat through all of this, first of all, thanks. I still really and truly love One Piece, and as much as I hate this ability, it doesn't change that. Second, please leave a comment explaining why. I cannot fathom why people like the power in a storytelling context on any level. And now, as a reminder, Gear 5 did not actually happen in 2024. It happened in 2022. The reason why I brought up this huge rant was because I wanted to get it off my chest, and also because we're still feeling the ripple effects from it. Everything is tying back to it, and that constantly takes me out of the story. On top of that, while some cool things did happen last year, along with some reveals that even I had seen coming, the overall storytelling I thought was a bit weak and drawn out. It just takes way too long to leave Egghead, and while the new stuff on Elbaf is fun, there wasn't that much of it before the year changed over. I could probably still put it in B or even B+, but I had to knock it down a bit for the thumbnail. I mean, you guys understand, right? I want to stress again that I love One Piece. I keep reading it, thinking about it this much because I love it, not because I hate it. There's been stuff I've loved since Gear 5 too, in particular the first few chapters of exploring Egghead. I love series about adventuring and exploring new places, and One Piece does that better than just about anything else. I just much prefer adventure piece to lore piece, and that goes double when Oda starts fucking up his own lore. Anyway, I'm sure I'm gonna get called every slur under the sun god Nika in the comments for this, but you ain't seen nothing yet. Quick reminder that for manga, I'm only ranking them based off what actually happened in 2024. Okay, so for those of you who didn't know, My Hero Academia ended last year. Once again, spoilers, here's your timestamp. While overall, I think the series had a lot of writing issues, oh my god, the whole last arc was just incredible from start to finish. It took an insanely long time, multiple years for this last battle, but it was all worth it. Every single side character comes back and gets something to do. Horikoshi didn't power scale the weaker characters out of the story because he smartly split the final battle into multiple smaller battles in different areas, which gives everyone a chance to help out. Even the stupid grape guy gets stuff to do. The ending doesn't trip over itself and ruin the entire series. It doesn't retcon huge parts of the story to make its ending make sense. It's just an enormous all-out war between the heroes and villains where everyone has a part to play, no matter how small. I cannot, though, in good conscience, talk about the My Hero manga and not talk about Horikoshi's art. Oh my god. If there was any one man I wish I could kill to steal all of their artistic abilities, it would be Dan Shive, but at a very close second comes Horikoshi. Jesus, just look at it! Horikoshi was far and away the best artist in Jump, and it wasn't even close. The only person that almost put up a fight was Boichi of Dr. Stone, but that ended back in 2022. I have no idea how he could keep this up every week for a full 10 years. The anime can look good at times, don't get me wrong, but even with how much they're able to bring, I still think you're doing yourself a disservice if you're not reading the manga. His art is that good. Really though, despite all the things I didn't like, despite the rocky storytelling, the mid characters, the bleh pacing, when it came time for that last arc, there was only one thought in my mind. This is how you end a fucking shonen manga. Yes, I just put One Piece in C tier and My Hero in S tier, cry about it. Now that I've thoroughly destroyed my reputation in the anime community in my very first video on the subject, let's move on to YouTube. You guys know how much I love YouTube. I've made 2 entire videos just about YouTubers I like, with plans to make more at some point. Now, this video is already way too long, so I'll be speeding through people I don't have much to say about. That being said, we're going to start with the less personal side of things and talk about the bigger productions on the platform this year, starting with Lackadaisy. I liked Lackadaisy. The pilot was fun, and I hope we get more soon, B+. Man, Gooseworks only uploaded 1 video last year, and it was an April Fool's prank. Honestly, a shame. I like their stuff. It's not like they were doing anything more important either. I guess they can get an A tier out of pity. Kurzgesagt, the bird science guys, make very polished videos. There's not much to really say about them besides look at the sleek animation and learn a bit, B+. And of course, there's Massive Hero Soccer Guy. These videos are really cool. It's crazy to see into the game industry from the perspective of such a legend. I got burned out on them after a bit since I don't actually make games yet, and the videos can feel pretty samey. Overall, I'd say B. Hey, so remember when The Escapist died? When, like, the whole website imploded and everyone who actually mattered went on to found Second Wind? Yeah, so I've been watching Yahtzee Croshaw for basically as long as he's been uploading to this platform, and of course I followed him over. When that happened, though, I got curious. I never really watched anyone else on The Escapist. What were they actually like? So I gave them a shot, and oh my god, they're all geniuses. I'm particularly fond of Design Delve as well now, and I make sure to keep up with both series as they come out. Overall, Second Wind is an easy A. I'm so glad these guys seem to have found their footing. Linus Tech Tips is good whenever I need some tech tips, and I'm willing to ignore all the controversies they've been in recently, B tier. Philip DeFranco makes me very sad 4 days a week, but that's just because he's very good at reporting the news, B+. So, Wildcard is a channel created by Jaden Animations and Jacob Alfarad to make videos containing their whole friend group, effectively using their resources to promote their lesser known friends and their channels. I think that's really awesome of them, and I like a lot of the Wildcard content too. It's polished up to basically the same standard as a lot of Alpharad content, which some people might know I kinda like. Okay, update, Wildcard kinda died, but like in a cool way. Basically, it did its job. The people it was trying to promote have their own flourishing channels now. I still recommend the old Wildcard videos, but in addition, go check out everyone individually, B+. Okay, let's talk shorts. I fully succumbed to the YouTube Shorts brain rot last year, and it was actually kind of a problem. Worse yet, I don't remember half the creators I watched, so I know the content was worthless to me. There are a few that I have here though, starting with Zumi Dokumi. By the way, this is also the year I finally started watching a few VTubers. Nobody that big, really. It's very hard to get me to watch actual streams, but well, we'll get there. Zumi is a VTuber with a Boston accent, which I find very funny to hear coming from an anime girl. I'm gonna be honest, that's the main thing I remember from the shorts. It is pretty funny though, B tier. Hello, is this Rin Penrose from Shorts? Rin exploded on Shorts for a few months, then disappeared, then reappeared, and seems to mostly just be chilling. The shorts are fine, inoffensive and kind of fun, but not mind-blowing, B+. TB Skyen is one of only 3 creators I subscribed to because of their shorts. It's so interesting to watch him break down character designs from various media, especially since he clearly does a lot of his own research and knows his stuff. I even watch his League of Legends skin reviews, and I've never even played that game. His review compilations for Pokemon are incredibly engaging, and he's the only shorts creator that I would strongly recommend. S tier. Gensho Yasuda is another of the creators I sub to because of shorts. They make short, looping 3D animations that are really cute. They also have a movie that just came out that I can't wait to see. I don't like them quite as much as Skyen, but still B+. And they are joined in that tier by Channel Cast Station. Or just Channel? I'm honestly not too sure. Anyway, their Miku animations are goated, the Mesmerizer music video is great even though the song is just okay, overall great animator, also B+. And that is everything that I remembered from shorts. Yeah, I spent half the year losing way too much time scrolling, and that is the extent of what I remember from it. Definitely a great use of my time. What actually is a great use of my time is watching animators. If you couldn't tell already though, it is very difficult for animators to pull out a B+. In fact, here's a list of all of the other ones that go in here too. Teleperte, Hyper, Lasercats, Lupus, Krugston, Too Many Snacks, Pymations, and Pringus McDingus. I feel basically the same way about all of them. I really like their stuff, but it doesn't blow me away enough to move them up to A. Speedoru does make the leap though. I love Punch Punch Forever, and while I didn't like episode 2 quite as much, it can still net them a solid A tier. They're not the only one that can pull ahead either. I cannot imagine having the patience and drive to make stop motion animation and using that to make whatever the fuck Pants a Hat makes. Honestly, I respect it, A tier. Now, Jet isn't really an animator, but he goes in here anyway because I have no idea where else to put him. Really funny redubs of Sonic cutscenes, and I'm sure everybody's seen its pronounced GIF by now. Very quality, A tier. Okay, now let's talk about people who I only really saw one video from, or who only really had one big video, starting with my friend Miryu. She uploaded one video in January of clips of me, her, and Cypherlock playing TF2. S tier. You? Oh, we'll get to you. If you haven't seen Skitty Bitty's video, I Hate Tears of the Kingdom, you should. It's a good watch, and while my feelings aren't quite as strong, I felt the same way about many of the things they complained about in it. A tier off of that one video. There's plenty of room for this channel to grow, and every time I see a channel with a runaway success like this, I just pray they don't waste that success and end up regretting it later like I did. I feel largely the same way about Keiko Cat. If you haven't seen their video, The Incel to Trans Pipeline and Inside Mari, I strongly recommend it. It's one of my favorite videos on the platform. It feels like a very personal look into their struggles with identity and an interesting exploration of the, titular topic. The video technically came out in 2023, but I just wanted to recommend them so much that I had to make a shout out anyway. If that doesn't already clue you into the S tier placement, I don't know what will. Veridis Yosh is a very small YouTube channel that you should absolutely check out. Their videos on beating Heart Gold with only Wooper are criminally underrated. It feels like somebody put their soul into this, and 500 views is an atrocity. Their videos since have been pretty laid back, so I'm hoping the poor performance didn't kill their drive to make higher effort stuff. A tier, and I'm looking forward to seeing more from them in the future. Camelin made a pretty good video about Fire Emblem Engage and an incredible video about Fire Emblem Three Houses. Neither of these videos were released in 2024, one being in 2023 and the other in early 2025, but fuck it. I like them and they're getting the A tier. It's my list. I need to watch their other stuff, but I might play Lies of P at some point, so I need to do that first. Demoople made this video about Fire Emblem Fates Conquest, which you already know that I love. The video isn't called The Gaslight of Fire Emblem Fates Conquest for nothing though, as he just bullshits literally everything about what happens, following the plot in only the vaguest possible sense. He even goes so far as to mod the game at times just to continue making up more stupid shit. Incredible comedy, insane editing. This is a fantastic video, and I have absolutely no idea if it's at all interesting to someone who hasn't played the game. They have a few other videos that are pretty funny, but this one is definitely the best in my opinion, and if you've played the game, it's a must-watch. For me personally, this is an easy S tier. CO2 Goldie made some really interesting videos that I need to watch more of, seriously. If titles like Robots as Trans Allegory interest you at all, I would definitely check them out, B+. Tronk has made some good videos on the Xenoblade games that I really need to watch more of. Along with, the everything else, B tier. H-Bomber Guy, wait, you didn't upload last year. Lindsay Ellis only made one video last year, but it was a good video, B+.
Lady Emily only made one video last year, but it was a good video, B+. Anonymous only made one video last year, and it was okay, B tier. And at this point, I'm just throwing any semblance of order out the window. We're just talking about these guys as they come up. Yakko CMN videos are always a good time, A tier. I never really know if I'm gonna get crippling existential dread as he peers directly into my soul as a creator, or a fun video where he nearly implodes after playing Sonic for 168 straight hours. Or a video with the same title for the 4th time in 9 videos. Okay, dude, I get that the title works, but you have to come up with a new one at some point. Hot Diggity Demon is a channel I thought was okay back in the day, then thought was really good when he started Brain Dump, then thought was great when Brain Dump was at its peak, but now that he's mostly become a streamer, I just don't watch that much anymore. Once again, I'm not a stream watcher in general, and especially for big streams. I prefer smaller streamers that I can interact with, so it takes quite a lot for a larger streamer to hold my attention. The little I have watched was okay, but I miss the higher production videos, C tier. Okay, now on to people I watched more regularly. I found Pcat through her Twitch stream because I originally thought, wow, that's a cool model, but the highlight for me has been her YouTube content. There's a lot of the more inspirational pursue art stuff that I see from a lot of people, but mixed with a ton of practical advice for aspiring artists, like me. I always appreciate that kind of stuff, and while her titles and thumbnails don't always grab my attention, I always enjoy her videos when I do click on them, B+. Alright, now this one is a little weird. 8-Bit Music Theory is a channel that I like, but at the same time, I find it hard to focus through their videos. Maybe it's just something I need to devote more attention to instead of just listening while I play a game, but I feel like if I miss any one thing, then everything doesn't make sense. Still though, it's really nice to see someone treat game music with this kind of respect, especially when they clearly know their stuff, B tier. Doug, as a YouTuber, is one of the GOATs on the platform right now. Pretty much every single video is unbelievably creative and wild. I have no idea how he even thinks of half of this shit. I considered making a video about him as well, but really it would just be my AlphaRad video again. Anyway, yeah, easy S tier for Doug. Speaking of AlphaRad, for anyone who saw my last video, it should come as no surprise that AlphaRad goes in the B+ tier. Yeah, so it turns out when you dedicate over a year to making sure you see absolutely everything a creator puts out, every video, every second of every stream, to make sure you don't miss anything important, you tend to get burned out on them. I was so happy when that video was done so I could watch less of his content, which I did last year, about 60% instead of 100. What I saw was still good, still that same level of content that I love, I just needed a break, I think. I've already started watching more again, so expect that to climb if I do this again next year. There's also AlphaRad's best friend Jaden Animations, who I finally started watching after she started appearing in his content. I remember back when Storytime animators first started taking off, I thought they were basically all PNG tubers because I just didn't watch that much. I lumped Jaden in with them and thought, yeah, not worth my time, because I was a stupid, idiot, dumbass kid. When I finally actually watched a Jaden Animations video, I went, holy shit, it's actually animated, as though that wasn't literally in the name. Anyway, yeah, A tier. And then there's their mutual friend, Wolfie VGC. I actually like Wolfie's content way more than I thought I would when first checking it out, and he's gotten so much better at writing over time. I don't really like the videos on online tournaments that are basically just stream highlights, but man, the other stuff is so good that I almost want to get into competitive Pokemon. Almost. Anyway, yeah, S tier. I've watched like half of his videos more than once. Definitely worth checking out. I've been watching abroad in Japan for quite a few years now, and he's a big part of the reason that I want to move to Japan. You see all this cool shit and go, man, I want to go there. I want to do that. I want to... Actually, I think I'm good on that one. His production values often feel more like a full TV production than a YouTube channel, even more so than almost anyone else on this list. A tier, I love this shit. And of course, we can't talk about Chris Broad without talking about his boyfriend, CDawgVA. I'm actually not really a fan of his main channel that much. While I like Wacky Weekend, I don't really enjoy the Crane Game videos, which is, a lot of them. I like a lot of the stream highlights on his second channel though, and overall I'd give him an A as well. Then of course there's Connor's other boyfriend, Giga. I like Giga. Not one of my favorites, but a solid B+. For those of you wondering why I'm not covering the whole of Trash Taste, I actually didn't watch any this year. I used to listen all the time when I worked in the back room at my old retail job, but ever since I stopped working there, I just haven't found the time for it. And as for Joey's individual channel, I don't know, I just never really got around to it. Let's see, who else is there? Oh yeah, Bobby Broccoli. So, I got some pushback on this even when I was ranking these on stream, but honestly, B tier. I have nothing but respect for Bobby as an editor. I have never seen anyone else with videos that look anything like theirs, and when I first saw one, I was completely enraptured. However, the more of them I watched, the less interested I came to be.
I don't know if it's the music, the scripting, his voiceover, or what, but I feel like by watching just a few of his videos, I've seen all of them, and I struggle to pay attention to them for more than 10 minutes or so now. If somebody told me Bobby Broccoli was their absolute #1 favorite YouTuber, I would believe them, but I would definitely not agree. I feel pretty much the same way about Summoning Salt, which is why they go right next to each other. It feels like watching the same video about a different topic, instead of letting the topic determine the feel of the video, you know what I mean? Super Eye Patch Wolf is one of my all-time favorites, and a top contender to get a video from me in the near future. His output this year was actually a little on the weaker side for him, and he's still in S tier. That's just what we're working with here. I still want to make a whole video on him, so I won't say too much, but yeah, still S tier. In fact, you know, no, he's still the GOAT. Put him up there. Best guy ever was, at one point, my favorite YouTuber. And also somebody I could see having an opinion that would get him canceled into oblivion. His persona just oozes confidence, and in my early college days, that was exactly what I needed. His 2 videos on Gurren Lagann are 2 of the best videos on the platform. The first manages to review the series in a way that allows you to understand his exact thoughts without words, and then the second is a full breakdown of how the show has so much more depth than everyone gives it credit for. I do wish his more recent videos had this much humor in their editing and writing, but even then, the stuff he's putting out now is still good. Ranking him just on his output this year, though, I'd go B+. While we're ranking the GOATs, Emp Lemon. I've been following him since he made YTPs, and it's been so cool to see his channel grow as I get older. The video topics, the presentation, it's one thing to watch a channel grow from fledgling to a legend. It's another to grow up alongside it. It is a unique experience that nothing else here can really claim. Oh, also, everything he made this year was great, S tier. Dunkey is not someone I always agree with, but he is someone I always understand. Even in his video on one of my favorite games, Xenoblade 2, I look at it and go, yeah, this game is a piece of shit. I usually agree with the points he makes, but not necessarily the conclusion, if that makes sense. Like, I agree that Banjo-Kazooie is a tighter paced and honestly better game when compared to Banjo-Tooie. But the things he lists that Tooie does better, the atmosphere, the characters, I value that more than the moment-to-moment simplicity of Banjo-Kazooie, which actually makes me enjoy Tooie more overall. All of this to say, I pretty much always know how I'll feel about a game after watching one of his videos, which is the mark of a great reviewer in my opinion. I also think he's pretty funny, A tier. Speaking of reviewers, Schaeferless is someone I haven't really watched that much recently. I got a bit tired of all the ranking videos, and yes, I get the irony. I wouldn't say his content is bad, I always like it when I watch it, but I just am not super interested in the lists, you know? B tier. Neril also makes reviews, I guess? I don't know, but I love his deadpan sense of humor. I've not seen any other YouTuber be so actively antagonistic to their own audience and have it not feel like they're just being a huge piece of shit. They also cover more than just games, talking about the state of emulation, fan projects, and controllers. A very interesting channel for anyone even tangentially interested in games, A tier. Sean is a channel that shouldn't work. His delivery is dry, there's little humor, no music, and the most basic editing I have ever seen in my life. Absolutely nothing about this channel should be entertaining, and yet here he is in the S tier anyway. I think it's really the writing. Sean is just so incredibly well articulated and argued, and his videos are paced so well that he's a fantastic YouTuber even without all of the tricks shitters like me use to keep people engaged. I recommend all of his content, but if I had to pick just 2, I'd go with his video on the Stellar Blade controversy or the one about Andrew Tate. Man, Eddie Burback makes some great content. I'm sure you've at least seen the Margaritaville or Rainforest Cafe or even the Ghost Kitchen videos floating around, but man, everything he makes is that good. He's the kind of YouTuber where I have no qualms waiting 5 months for another upload because I know it's going to be good enough to justify it. A tier. Xelblum is the one and only Fire Emblem YouTuber I watch regularly. Really interesting challenge runs and strategy with cool insights into his thought process and, most importantly, great humor. That's where a lot of other Fire Emblem channels lose me. Xelblum might be the YouTuber I watched the most last year, and I've seen some of these bigger videos 3 to 4 times each. Easy S tier. Okay, this video is already way too long. I'm gonna lightning round some of these. Foco Good, B+. Game Maker's Toolkit, really interesting insight into how games are designed, B+. Hazel is extremely comfy and I love her laid back vibe, A tier. I'm not always in the mood for King K, but when I am, holy fuck, B+. Fudge is underrated. Go watch the world's worst review of DKC Tropical Freeze, and then everything else on his channel, A tier. Legal Eagle good, but videos can feel bland, B tier. Noodle good, A tier. Ludwig makes good stuff, but doesn't always blow me away, B plus. Awesome Sauce has incredible editing and actually makes me super interested in learning about a game I haven't played in 2 decades, A tier. Scamboli can be very funny, but is also the person on this list I'd most expect to get cancelled, B plus. Small Ant does some cool challenges and makes pretty okay videos out of them, B plus. Point Crow does some cool challenges and makes pretty okay videos out of them. And also a bunch of other weirdo shit. What the fuck is B+? Demo Night TF2 good, but need more upload. B+. I don't like Shonik's delivery or how much of his videos are spent on silent panning shots. I usually watch long enough to get the gist and then peace out. B tier. Uncle Dane had a few higher effort videos, but I don't really like live commentary as a format. Still, for the year overall, A tier. Tom Scott, interesting. B+. And finally, this guy. The moment you've been waiting for. This guy is Paul De La O. They have no content, and I'm their only subscriber. I have no idea how I found them, and I have no recollection of ever subscribing to them. S tier. And with all the YouTubers out of the way, we can talk streamers. I'd like to stress again that I am not a big stream watcher, especially when it comes to larger ones. I can count the number of big streamers I watched all year on one hand, and only one of them is anywhere even approaching a high tier. Doug. Because of course it's Doug. Unlike most other streamers where you can get a more condensed and honestly better paced version of their content from their YouTube channels, Doug's insane ability to involve his chat in absolutely everything in increasingly absurd ways provides an actual reason to watch the streams over the videos. They create a completely different experience from just watching, to the point where I feel justified in putting Doug on the list twice, both as a streamer and a YouTuber. I also watched a bit of CDougVA as a streamer, and I don't really care about the normal streams, but I always managed to tune in for big events like the Cyclothon and the charity auction. I didn't watch most of what he streamed, but from what I did see, B+. Okay, let's talk about the few streamers I actually watched. Dexy is a speedrunner who runs the Generation 4 Pokemon games, but I mostly watch them to work on my Japanese listening comprehension. Overall B, I think. Lita and Raremium I mostly watch for the same reason, but I'm more invested in their content. Lita because it's really cool to watch someone draw actual manga in real time, especially with her gorgeous art, what the fuck? And Raremium because she talks like if she dropped below 600 words per minute, her head would explode like the bus from Speed. B+ for both. Ravenlight doesn't stream too often anymore due to health issues, but I still really enjoy their stuff when they do stream, A tier. Okay then, on to the real streamers. Everyone I just talked about, they're all fake. There are only 2 people who, when I see go live, immediately get me to click the watch stream button and make me feel bad if I miss one. The first one I want to talk about is my friend Miryu, who I mentioned earlier. Putting Miryu as a YouTuber in S tier was a haha funny joke because, spoiler alert, and I'm very sorry Miryu, one clip dump cannot possibly get you into S tier. I just thought it was funny to put my friend up there. Miryu as a streamer actually goes into S tier because she is just so much fucking better at it than me. She's funny, pretty freaking good at games, and most importantly, still entertaining when chat is quiet, which is a skill I wish I had. Part of why I think I'm a bad streamer is that when I don't have a chat to bounce conversation or jokes off of, I just kinda get quiet. Miryu does not have that issue, and I hate her for it. She basically farms funny or skilled clips every single goddamn stream, and I wish I could, for just an hour, be as entertaining as she can somehow be for 6. She's also criminally underrated, so please go show her some love, you guys. She wasn't my favorite streamer of last year, though, as there's always a line with content made by a friend. It can never pass the best of the stuff you love because you're always thinking about the person who made it, because you know them. My favorite streamer of last year, then, was the other person I made sure to always watch, Ilian. I'm honestly not really sure how to sell her content. Talking about why you like a streamer is, especially if you're a fan of smaller streamers, really hard to do without sounding like you have a very serious problem. I just really love the cozy vibe while watching her draw or play a game. It's cute to see her trip over words a bit because English is her second language, and getting to see how VTuber models are rigged is cool too. I don't know, man, the streams are just nice. And then, finally, the most important streamer. I don't know if I'd ever be able to live it down if I left them off my list. Dr. Chungi. S tier. Okay, that wraps up just about everything I think people might actually want to hear me talk about. Let's move on to the other stuff. First up is everything I did in real life last year. The most important one being, I decided last year that I wanted to learn how to draw, in the hopes that I could learn to animate in 2D. I actually did that. You saw some of those earlier. The very first thing I learned about art when I started is that it sucks dick. I am still so bad at it. Granted, practicing regularly has been a challenge for me. What else is new? But still, I don't want to give up on it. It's easily one of my favorite decisions I've ever made, and someday I want to be able to draw things that make other people feel the way I do about my favorite artists. A lot of my time spent learning was done on stream, and streaming goes into B+. I like it, but it kind of sucks when there's nobody to talk to. Like, I stream when I want to talk with randos on the internet or share an experience with people, but sometimes you just kind of stream for 3 hours and nobody shows. It's the reality of being a small streamer. That said, if you guys disagree with any of my terrible opinions, I'm open to discussing them at twitch.tv/pride_. Let's see, what else did I do? Be single? B tier, I could take it or leave it. I'm at a point right now where I can survive just fine on my own without needing anyone else, so it's really just up to if I meet the right person. Alright, get ready, because I'm about to say the single most privileged thing you've ever heard in your life. I went on a cruise last year, and it was C tier. No, wait, it gets better. The cruise I went on the year before was better. I'm considering making a whole video about my cruise exploits, so I won't go into too much detail here, but if you ask me about it on stream, I'd be happy to tell some stories. Basically, my advice though is, if you somehow are able to go on a cruise, pick one with a lot of stops at a lot of different locations. We spent more than half the cruise at sea, and while the ship had stuff to do, it got old fast. I ended up spending most of it in my room playing Fire Emblem Engage. Once I got back from that though, I finally did it. I finally got a real job. I had been trying to find work since I graduated college in May of 2023, at 25 years old. Oh my god, it took me 7 years to get a 4-year degree. Shuffling the mental breakdown under the rug for now, I got hired through an incredibly stupid and convoluted process that ended with my working for a big global IT company, and honestly, it's been pretty awesome to have money again. I'm sure the rank will fall over time, but honestly, for right now, shit's A tier. The best part is my job has a lot of downtime between assignments, which gives me plenty of time to get back into studying Japanese, which is so much fun. I haven't studied much since passing the N5 in 2023, but I just love the language so much. I really want to keep improving at it. Easy A tier. The bad part of getting a job was I had to move out on my own. Man, I love more than 50% of my income being thrown into a toilet every month. Isn't it great? Ugh. There are benefits, like being able to make my own rules, but I like to think I was already pretty responsible. C tier. Another upside was learning to cook. I never really bothered when I lived with my parents, but honestly I think it's kind of fun and also a great way to save money. A tier. I started working out a bit too when I moved in October, but I haven't been doing it long enough to actually get any results yet, so right now it just sucks. B tier on the promise that it gets better. Lastly, on New Year's Eve, my mother used years of saved credit card points to get herself, my brother, my sister, and I a hotel room in Times Square to watch the ball drop. And when we finally got there, we couldn't actually see the ball from our hotel room. And the hotel was charging $400 per person for access to a tiny area you could see it from. And when we went down to see it from the street, there was this much of a crowd 10 blocks away waiting to be let in to see it, so we just gave up and watched it on the TV. Yup, we had a hotel room in Times Square on New Year's Eve, and we watched the ball drop on the hotel TV. But I got some cool books at the book off the next day, so B tier. Okay, we're almost at the end, just 2 more sections left. First up, TV and movies. Looking at my notes, I keep thinking, man, I really watched so much less TV and movies than anime. Am I really that cringe? And then I remember that the reason the list is so short is because most of it goes under the umbrella of Doctor Who. So obviously the answer is yes. God, I was not expecting to like Doctor Who that much when I started it, but it's so good. I knew the premise of guy travels through time and space and is cool, but I always thought they tried to keep it a secret in-universe, the way that a lot of anime do, so you can pretend it might be happening in our world too. I am very happy to say that is not the case. Earth is irreparably changed as early as the first season, and that is great. I watched starting from the reboot with Christopher Eccleston all the way through the first half of Jodie Whittaker's first season. I would also be crucified by my friends if I tried to rank the whole show at once, so instead I'm ranking each Doctor individually, starting with Chris himself. And he gets an A. I just loved the energy he brought to the role. It made so much sense for this basically immortal, timeless semi-deity to just kind of be an asshole all the time. I liked watching him grow out of that a bit too, and I wish he got more time to develop. Next in line is the fan favorite, so incredible they brought him back for more, David Tennant. And no surprise, he gets a B+. Yeah, I like David Tennant, but not quite as much as Chris. He had some great plots and I like his energy, but it always felt just a touch off, which, funnily, is also my overall thoughts on Matt Smith. I like the writing of Matt Smith a bit less, but I like the way he plays the Doctor a bit more, so I'm putting them right next to each other in B+. And then, of course, we have the GOAT, the S-tier god, Peter Capaldi. I have some issues with the writing for some individual episodes, but overall, it's just a great 3 seasons of television. Pete also basically gets to do what I wanted from Chris Eccleston and just be an asshole for much longer, so it should come as no surprise that he had my favorite run. In fact, it was so good, he even gets promoted to my favorite TV/movie slot for the year. Finally rounding us out is the little I watched of Jodie Whittaker, who goes in B. I don't have any issues with how she plays the Doctor or anything, it really just feels like the writing quality dropped off of a cliff. Now, when we wanted to take a bit of a break from Doctor Who mid-year, we decided to watch Lost. Yes, that Lost. Its reputation precedes it. My dad walked by as we were watching the first episode, and his only comment was, Are you really sure you want to do that to yourself? Thankfully, we only watched season 1 and like a quarter of season 2, so it didn't get the chance to nuke its own writing. A tier. The other show we watched while taking that break was Sonic X, and I am once again very sorry, you guys, but it is just not as good as you remember from when you were a kid. I couldn't even sit through it long enough to get to the second season, so it's going into C tier. Over the course of the year, I watched 3 movies in theaters. The first was Deadpool and Wolverine, which I thought was fun, but only like half the jokes felt like they landed the way the writers probably wanted them to. It's alright, B tier. Next was The Wild Robot, which was much better than I thought. DreamWorks cooked with this one, A tier. And rounding us out was Sonic 3. People were raving about this for weeks, you already know it's A tier. And finally, let's talk music. Unlike with games, anime, and manga, there is no easy way for me to actually accurately track every single song I listened to last year. It's hard to even get a list of every individual artist. As a result, this section is the one with the most holes in it, but I made sure to include all the big names that really defined what I listened to over the course of the year. I also saved it for last because I can't actually play you pretty much any of the music for reference, because if I do, Daddy YouTube will run this video through with a longsword, despite this being the most transparently transformative video I've ever made. I am literally criticizing and reviewing them. Anyway, I'll play someone I think I can get away with it. Let's start with a little bit of Western stuff I listened to before we dive into the Japanese music that makes up the other 90%. Starting off Western stuff is the fucking GOAT, Snarky Puppy. The way this band works is that I listen to them, think they're the coolest fucking shit in existence, because they are, and then after a month or 2 stop listening to them again. Then after another 3 months I rediscover them and wonder why the hell I ever stopped listening to them. We Like It Here is quite possibly the best album of all time. It's very rare for me to listen to an artist and then actually actively seek out more of their work, but holy hell, Snarky Puppy made me do that and then some. Easiest S tier of my life. Then there's the 8-Bit Big Band, who, holy fuck, makes some of the best covers of game music I've ever heard. Now, if you heard that and thought, well, that's not real music, I would offer the counter argument that they won a Grammy for one of their arrangements. And that's not a meme, and they didn't win some offshoot prize or something. They won a real, honest-to-God, actual Grammy for Best Arrangement for Meta Knight's Revenge. I didn't even know that was possible. Obviously they're goated. I go through the same phases with them that I do with Snarky Puppy, S tier. Now, Insane in the Rain only uploaded like 2 videos last year, but that still means he goes on the list, baby! They were, okay, solid B+. If I took into account his whole backlog, he'd be S tier, but alas, here we are. Okay, the Persona 3 Reload soundtrack. I didn't list the soundtrack for the other games I played despite listening to a lot of them because they're part of the overall game rankings. I didn't play Reload though, so it goes here. The Reload soundtrack is in this weird spot where most of the remix stuff is all worse, but the new stuff is all incredible. To briefly explain, the original game has this really cheesy trumpet that sounds good enough to identify but bad enough to be fun. It sits right in this golden middle ground with just the right amount of cheese. The new trumpet samples are too good to be cheesy, but not good enough to sound good. They just end up sounding weird and out of place to me. I'm also not really a fan of the new singer, Azumi Takahashi, on the original tracks. I don't think she can match the energy Yumi Kawamura brought to tracks like Mass Destruction. The new stuff that was written around her voice is incredible. Color Your Night is one of my favorite songs of the entire year, but I don't think she fits on the original tracks, unfortunately. Also, Changing Seasons isn't even in French anymore. What the f? Anyway, I decided that since the other tracks were in Persona 3 technically, I'm only gonna rank this by the new stuff, which means another one for the S tier, baby. 4 ranks in, and the Western section is already so stretched that we're talking about a Japanese game, followed by an Indonesian VTuber who covers Vocaloid tracks just because they're both in English. Reichi was my most listened to artist last year according to YouTube, and that does not surprise me in the slightest. She's got a killer voice, and I even listen to both her covers and the original songs a lot of the time. She was also my gateway drug into Vocaloid, even if it took me like 4 years to get there. I first discovered her from her cover of Bakudanma by Yorushika, and I thought, wow, an English cover that I don't cringe at constantly. And after a few days, that became, I wonder what else she's made. And after a few years, that became, I need more right now. Now, you could make the argument that Reichi cheated her way into S tier, by the way she's in S tier, by doing covers. Since she effectively gets to cherry pick the best songs from all the artists she covers and she can easily ignore duds, she doesn't have to have the low points that they do. I think this argument is quite shit. Firstly, in that covers are so much harder than people realize. It's so hard to capture the original magic of a piece and put your own spin on it in a way that doesn't alienate people who like the original. And in case that argument doesn't hold water, I also like her original stuff, so fuck you. She goes in the S tier, and that's that. And we're already onto the Japanese section. To be fair though, Snail's House's music doesn't actually have lyrics. Oh yeah, there's no justifying the overrepresentation of Japanese music, I'm not even gonna bother. Anyway, been listening to Snail's House for a few years, and while I don't listen to every track, I'm never let down by them. B+. Eve, okay, now here's one I've been listening to for forever. It was really cool to see them do the JJK opening and go, I know them! And their output last year was stellar, man. Glorious Day, Insomnia, Lazy Cat, just banger after banger. Not my favorite artist though, and they wane enough for an A tier, I think. I love the stuff I love, but not every track hits with me, so they get a bit of a dock. Man, I Wanna Be a Girl is the only song by Mafu Mafu that I listened to last year, and it is fantastic. Easy A tier off of just that one. Now let's not think about what liking that says about me. Minami is a fantastic singer-songwriter with some great rock tracks about depression, and that's all I really have to say. B+, keep up the good work. Kenshi Onezu, Chainsaw Man opening guy. Good stuff. B+. Nana Owakari tends to write songs based on a theme. A silly character, a funny interaction, that kind of stuff. Makes her music great for anime endings, which she's done a few of, but also good standalone. I wasn't the biggest fan of the stuff she actually put out in 2024, so she gets a B tier, but she's put out some good stuff at the start of this year, so I'll still recommend checking her out. Okay, To You. So, I discovered To You at the start of 2024 with Trapped in the Past, which was my most listened to track last year. I listened to their stuff all throughout the year until right at the end I saw this on Twitter. For those of you who can't read Japanese, which includes me, this basically says, hey, the band is dissolving and we are deleting all of our music off every platform. So basically in late 2023, the songwriter slash guitarist pulled the band out of their record contract by himself, which I'm amazed he was able to do alone. He had spent all of his time and money on women and cars and shit and felt bad about it, so he apologized publicly for his behavior. He also said that he wanted an environment where people hated him because that's where he did his best work, which, given what his songs are about, okay, fair enough. He then decided that he would keep making music no matter what, and the story should have ended there. And then in mid-2024, he was arrested after a failed attempt to Minecraft himself and his girlfriend, who was a minor. Just every single word gets worse. It's honestly incredible. It is basically impossible for me to support them on any level as a person anymore, and even thinking about some of the shit they've done makes me feel sick. The music is good though, A tier. Yorushika was my favorite artist for a long time. I still love a lot of their older stuff, but while I do still like the newer stuff, it doesn't quite click the same way that songs like Nautilus and Deep Indigo do. They also didn't put out much music in 2024, but they still get an A tier out of respect. YOASOBI, look, I don't think you need me to tell you why these guys go in the A tier, right? And of course, Zuttomayo is the GOAT, S tier. They've made basically nothing but bangers for over 2 years. The biggest change for me this year in terms of music was this, right here. After years of listening to only covers and writing off the originals, saying I just don't like the vocals, that they could never compete with real human voices, I finally tripped and fell face first into the Vocaloid rabbit hole. I basically got curious about the original versions of the stuff Reichi covered, and I wanted to hear them just because. And then YouTube autoplay kept adding those songs to my playlists. And then it started adding new Vocaloid songs to my playlists. And then my entire music taste was nothing but Vocaloid in the span of about 2 weeks. And of course, the star shining at the peak of that new list was the diva herself, Hatsune Miku. Now, I of course want to talk about a bunch of the artists individually, but this ranking is just for Miku as a whole, who goes into the S tier, of course. She doesn't go into favorites though, because that's reserved for my favorite individual song that I listened to last year. If I had to pick my favorite Vocaloid artist, it would be very difficult to pick between Deco27 and Pinocchio P. They both excel at different things, which land them right next to each other in my eyes. Deco is just a fantastic songwriter. His music is bombastic and fun, and he's very good at writing Miku into a character role over the course of a song. Particularly one of a girl who is completely obsessed with the guy she likes to the point of insanity. It's a bit strange that keeps popping up. I wonder if he's into... Pinocchio P, on the other hand, is not as good at the songwriting part, necessarily. Their music is still nice to listen to, but it's not as catchy as Deco's. Basically, it's not usually the kind of thing you hear once and think, man, that was incredible. Where he excels is using Miku's voice as his own. Of course, he has songs where Miku plays a character like a lot of other composers, but most of my favorite of his tracks are ones like I'm Glad That You're Evil Too, Fake Meme, or With or Without Me, where it feels like someone just screaming their feelings into a void, desperately hoping for anyone to hear them and care. He writes so well about how it feels to be alone, how he feels when making his art, and it truly feels like his lyrics are a window into his soul. These two are, to me, the two pillars of why I love Vocaloid, and I would be doing them a disservice by putting them anywhere aside from right next to each other in the S tier. Harumaki Gohan is one of few musical artists whose tracks I'd describe as having soundscapes. I know that every song has one, technically, but their music actively brings those ideas to mind. The songs just so instantly, within a single note, completely transport you to the tone and setting of the video. When Fireflies Never Came goes... or when Zero Talking goes, or when M Purple goes, God damn, that is how you open a fucking song. It whisks you away effortlessly in a way nobody else on this list can manage, which is why they also go in the S tier. Ime-chan Wants to Be a Guitar Hero is a cute song that I sent to my sister because she was learning guitar at the time. Fun and cute, B+. Ina Bakumori is a very love it or hate it artist for me, and one where even the tracks I love have gotten weary over time. Overall though, I'd say they're still B+. Jin made a good song for the Project Voltage collab, as well as another good song using Kasane Teto, B+. Kei Nasuda is another of my favorite artists, both inside and outside of Vocaloid. I'm especially fond of any song with a video done by Avocado 6, but basically everything they make vibes of me, S tier. Now I would rank all of Sawtone's music, but I only listened to the rest of their stuff after the new year. I did listen to Magical Cure Love Shot though, and that shit is A tier. Banger song, iconic meme. Mesmerizer was the big song last year and somehow creeped its way into being my third most listened to track despite only thinking it's like a B+ song. The video shoots it up to A, there are so many fun Easter eggs in there, but I mostly listened to it a lot because it kept popping up and was good enough for me not to skip it. I don't think I ever actively searched for it over the course of the year. Now, there are two much smaller Vocaloid composers I want to round out this section with before we move on to my favorite track. I found both of them through basically a small miracle of happenstance because of YouTube deciding to make the third recommendation on every video be a very small channel, which is the best feature they've ever added. Anyway, the first of the two is Mechaloton, who technically doesn't go into Vocaloid because they work with Kasane Teto and she uses Synth V, which is a different program. Look, you get it. It's the same shit with a different name. I instantly fell in love with Meta Machine and then listened to the rest of their original stuff and fell in love with that too. Their music is in English, which is a plus, and a bit strange for this community, but I really just love their lyrics and musical style. Songs like Cheap Suits and For the Birds were some of my most listened to last year. There's still so much room to grow too, so I'm putting them in the A tier. I expect even greater from them next year. The other small composer is one I'd honestly be amazed if anyone watching this video had even heard of before, and not just because I don't expect anyone to actually watch this far into the video. It's Natsuyasai P, I think? Anyway, you know how back in the day you'd be watching a video for a song and you'd see comments say, man, I must be like half the views on this video, haha, and you're like, yeah, sure, motherfucker, I'm sure you listened to it 20 million times, thanks. In this case, I can actually say that with certainty because this song has 18 views. In fact, there's not a single track on this album, Soulbox, with more than 1,000 views. I'm gonna look so stupid if they're actually famous and this is just an alt upload or something. I'm giving them leeway here as a smaller artist, but their music is just great. Basically, my only gripe is the lower quality of some of the instrument samples, which could be intentional, or just because they can't afford better. Either way, the melodies, chords, progressions, man, I just love their stuff. I wish I understood Japanese better so I could really get some of these songs, which I guess is the trade-off you get with smaller creators. Anyway, they're criminally underrated, so please, go listen to Soulbox by Natsuya SIP and Everything by Mechaluton. A tier, no question. There's small issues, but so much room to grow. And finally, my favorite song of the year. It's surprisingly not my most listened to song, Trapped in the Past by 2U. It's also not by my most listened to artist, Reichi. I, in fact, did not listen to a single other song by this artist all year, although I've listened to some of their other tracks before. My favorite song of 2024, the sound which defined my entire summer, was Shoujo Rei. It is a gorgeous song that instantly hits you with summer. It feels energetic yet listless, even before you read the lyrics and go, oh wow, this song is fucked. It envelops you in its aesthetic to the point where I can see the cicadas, smell the ocean, feel the warm breeze on my cheeks. The only other song I've listened to that so vividly painted images in my head like this was Plastic Love. The world falls away every time I listen to it, so of course there was never another choice for my favorite song.
And there it is. Absolutely everything I did last year, ranked. If anyone actually managed to make it this far into the video, wow, I never want to make something this long again, which at this point means you should expect another video of this length this time next year. This was a huge departure for me in terms of content, and I want to start experimenting more. I've got some ideas, like one about my playthrough of Fear, or one about the Fire Emblem Iron Man I'm doing on my Twitch channel. I want to upload more this year in general, even if the videos are different, and even if they're closer in quality to this one than something like my Alpha Rat or Lazy Purple videos. First though, I need a full month off. I've been working on this video pretty much non-stop since I started editing it 4 months ago. Just ask Miryu. I refused to let myself start any new games until it was done, so I've got quite the backlog. I do like how productive that made me though, so I think I'm gonna alternate and spend 1 month on drawing in games and then 1 on a video. Which is to say, expect a video about every 2 months and hold me to that. And finally, one more time, thank you so much for making it this far. It really does mean the world to me.